So, everybody, welcome to episode 11 of the I Needed This Today podcast. And we're currently still we're like episode 2 now of the X Demons. Wait, we call that 3. The one with Tim was an X Demons, but we've got our second demon
Yes.
we've summoned another demon to come share some stories of the past and bring us all the way into the future. And that is none other than one of our best friends, Atlas Talisman, who ah need the
Yeah, we need the applause button.
we should get that featured. But Atlas, to just nearly anyone that's met him, is just a countless amount of figures, ways that you could explain him. Today, how is Atlas in my life? I would say a student of life and someone that is extremely passionate about creating reality in a new way and really creating a tribe, a community of people across the world to really look at life and how we can deeply be passionate about it and be affected by life, be curious about life. And one of the strongest facets of how he's channeling that is through a thing called open world theater, which has deeply impacted me. That is truly in my living nature, the way I'm interacting with life and how I facilitate all my work and is embedded in just this podcast alone in the way that I'm showing up. And why he's here for this particular podcast is because Atlas is also an ex-demon of Alpha Mama, our co-host.
Yes.
It's so honored to be.
Continue, Atlas.
No, I just really love that is true. I really love that I'm a pivotal part of the life story inexorably. Even though the ex-demons can be released and released with love, they still have that effect on our DNA and they shift. And I love that I have affected you and you've completely, fundamentally shifted the timeline that I walk. So yeah, just a nice little moment to land that.
I love that you both named that.
Yeah, I'm excited to see the way that you two have affected one another.
Yeah, I think that's like something that I'd really like to focus in on this podcast as well, in this episode, because relationships do change the course of our lives. You know, they're these huge crossroads where we were walking in a particular direction and then we meet somebody and then we start walking together. And then when that particular shape of the relationship breaks down, it changes you forever. Like you will never be who you were before you met that person. You're forever changed. And I think that's such a beautiful and sometimes tragic experience that we get to experience as humans.
I feel like that's a really brilliant place to start off. I don't think we did it in the last one, as I'd love for both of you just to paint two separate pictures of your worlds moments before you met one another. Like what life was like the day you woke up when you met one another. Where were you at emotionally, like really revisiting that place, what it is that you desired, what it was you were journeying around love, what you're passionate about in your art, in your work. Where were you at the morning you met one another?
Do you want to kick this off, Samram? Oh, by the way, for anyone who's listening, I call Atlas Samram. That's the word that we have for each other, and we'll go into it more later.
We'll get there.
But if you hear me say Samram, I'm addressing Atlas.
And for anyone who's listening, in case it's confusing, I call Alpha Samram as well.
It's not a third party, separate entity.
So on the morning that I met Alpha for the very first time, I had a spaciousness of my life. I think I was probably near the end of my first degree. I was very much a colorful character. I remember that day I was actually wearing a SpongeBob SquarePants t-shirt, my big yellow chain. I had my curly mustache. I had, medium length curly hair, big red rimmed glasses. I was really defining myself through, was it the see-through glass frames? Okay, it was the see-through glass frames. And I was really defining myself through expression, particularly creative expression. I liked to be an oddity on the fringe. We actually met in a recording studio of a mutual friend, and I was being brought in there as, I guess, the creative freak. You know, he was coming like, come and just hear what we're doing, throw some spice in, blow my mind, kind of vibe. Um, I was balancing in a place that I've been balancing for a while, which was being somewhere I didn't particularly want to be. I didn't really want to be based in Sydney, in a similar position now. Um, and the way I experience that on a feeling sense is the world around me feels a little cold and hard. I remember the place we met was down near one of the wharfs, and there's these big old rock structures like cliffs around the area. I think, I'm not sure, in my mind it was like it was raining. I'm not sure if it was, but that's the sense my world had at that time, was that it had just rained. It was a bit like cement and rock cliff, a bit inaccessible, like not porous, not soft, not receptive, not fertile. And so for me, digital world and creativity, and just I poured a lot of energy into conversation and meeting up with people and spinning reality through telling them what I would be doing. So I guess that was why I went to the studio that day, was to support our mutual friend in the studio, but also to keep the story of me going, really. That's the truth of it, is I spent a lot of time weaving this character who was called Bravo at the time.
You got to tell them your full name.
Bravo Child.
Yeah, Bravo Moonchild.
Bravo Moonchild. Moon after Michael Jackson, Moonwalker. Bravo, as I didn't want to have the duality. I remember one of my heartbreak moments was watching an interview with Rowan Atkinson, who was one of my heroes growing up as a clown, with Mr. Bean and a bunch of other things he'd done, Blackadder and all sorts of crazy creatures he had manifested himself as. And then witnessing his very eloquent and sort of slight conservative way that he was talking in a very British approach to conversation, very well formulated. And I was like, oh my God, there's such a disparity between who he is in his art and who he is in the world. And I just didn't want that. I didn't want the fallacy. I wanted to feel his art absolutely in his life. And it's sort of an integrity in that. So, yeah, Bravo was like a clown kind of name. And when I changed my name legally to Bravo, it was because I didn't want to have the green room timeout, take off my makeup and have a smoke and complain in the back room aspect to my life. I wanted to be like, no, the clown of whimsy and wonder brings light on stage, and you also will do that if he's meeting his future partner in a studio. And maybe I'll throw to you. What was your first impression meeting Bravo Moonchild?
Bravo Moonchild. Yeah, so I do remember the outfit that you had on, and because it was SpongeBob, but it was, you had these overalls, which at that time was your uniform. You only had like 3 pieces of clothing, and it was like 2 pairs of overalls, I think it was, and maybe a pair of shorts and something else, or a pair of jeans, something like that. When I saw you, you had the yellow chain on, and I just remember thinking you were like a Mario Brothers, like a Super Mario brother. That's like the way that you were, because the glasses and the curly mustache, and you were like this character. You seemed to me like more than human, and at that time in my life, so I was in a relationship with someone who was we were in a band together, and we had just been signed to a major record label, so we were creating all of this pop music. And it was really, for me, it was a big decision to choose to say yes to that path, firstly to say yes to being in a pop group, because I was doing my own thing musically, and because they saw what I was doing, they were like, come in with our pop group, we need a female singer, we've got this deal on the table, come sign the record deal. And I was like, oh, it doesn't really feel right, but it's a great opportunity, I should say yes. So I said yes. Got into a relationship with one of the guys. And so like at that time for me, like my life felt very, oh, look, I'm living by society's, like I'm winning. Like I've got the boyfriend, I've got the record deal, like go me, it was like, but I knew I was lying on some level. I knew it was like big imposter syndrome, because I knew that I'm a freak. I can't do this pop music shit. Like, I don't like this music. I hate it, actually, but I have to do it to get to this other place. So when Bravo Moonchild walked in, I was like, who is this? You know, when like you can feel a person's essence and there's like something about them that feels just hyper real, like people stand out in a different way. And it was like, I know when I've come across people like that in my life, it's like something in me just goes, I need to know this person. Like, I need to know them, because the thing that they have, I want. Maybe it's that we recognize it in ourselves or something, but it's like, I was like, I want the thing that you have. And I was just so, I was so impressed, you know, and impacted just by his ideas and his ability to just like have these ideas. And that was one of the things that I always remembered about him. It's like, fuck, this guy just has this idea factory that just doesn't stop. There's just like a tap that's always on. It's all these ideas just coming out and things that I would never, ever think of. And I just was so impacted by that. And that's the first time that we met. And then there were some other moments. One moment where I think it was at 107 Projects. I was wearing these white, very tight pants. And I remember that you commented later, you were like, those pants. Yeah, look, you know, I have that ass, so it's a very memorable ass. But
wait, pause. I need to hear this. This is just personal for me. Did you make an objectifying woman statement at that time? I could not imagine you going, "Damn girl, you look good in those pants." That is not the Atlas Talisman. I know.
No.
Who was this Bravo child?
No, the moment was, so Alpha and her partner at the time, and our mutual friend had come to watch a gig that I was running, and they were lining up to kind of go in, and it was actually, I think, your partner at the time doing something, saying something. I think he like grabbed you or something, and I was kind of just acknowledging and like high-fiving them both at being this attractive couple. And I was like, yeah, I was just kind of supporting their lusciousness together. So yeah, and then Alpha owned it and just shook a thing. But no, it wasn't. It was not at all in any way objectifying the.
Damn it!
No, but later on, you did tell me that was one of the most impactful moments of meeting me. It was those pants. It was those particular pants.
I tell you what is impactful, and in the line with the pants, but it's your ripeness. And it's not just your ass. It's like, I remember we once went to one of the, I think it was a celebration on the fact that you'd been signed, and it was like a rooftop.
Yeah, that's embarrassment.
Yeah, and I remember you coming up and your cheeks were the same. It's just this like ripe aliveness. There's this rosiness. There's this, it was very much a signature of you at the time, which is, I guess you're talking about that popping out from the general mundane. And I don't have a really significant thing to say about that, but that's a particular quality that I think relates to relationships, relates to love. Of course, it'd be a physiological kind of response to us alivening or coming forward, like probably some primal sense of like potential mate or whatever it is. But I think that, speaking back to what you're talking about, Paisley, on being curious and reinventing reality, there's a quality of hypnosis, of vagueness, of blank slatedness, of, like the saturation has been drained from life, where everyone's the same or we're distracted, that I hope to remedy, or at least have as like my monastic practice, to pull myself out of that as much as possible, because I don't think it's true. And every now and again we meet someone that alerts our senses and helps kind of strip away that, or we have enough, it's like we have reverence for them, or we show up. That essentially means that person is bringing you to life. And I think that is one of the key hallmarks of a good relationship. And when that stops happening, I think you've got to really reassess or recalibrate what your relationship is. Because for me, that is probably the single service of being in a relationship, is to learn the person, to study the person, to learn their constellation, how they thrive. And like, it's like if you had a pot plant, you do the same thing. Do you need sunlight? Do you need water? Like, how do you come to life? So that's what I would hope to do for a partner.
And I want to just like jump on that as well, because that was one of the things like early on, you know, from the first time I met you, but then subsequently getting to know you just as a friend, like one of the things that I noticed in myself when I was around you was like, oh, I want to rise to this level of aliveness and being excited for life, and, you know, just like a particular like presence that I wasn't experiencing in the people around me. And it was like, I think that's a hallmark of knowing, you know, if someone's good for you. It's like, are you actually feeling like you want to arrive more into life and like actually feel life more? And if not, then, you know, maybe it's not so good for you. But that's something that was always there.
One other thing I remember.
Sorry, go Atlas.
I just was thinking back on some of our early relationship, and we have definitely skipped a time period, which I'm happy to go back to, as like the gradual dissolving into romance. But on the other side of actually being together, I remember these cute little moments where you'd be almost like startled, or it was kind of like you were in this usual secret chamber of yourself. And then you'd look at me and go, like, you can see me in here? It's like you're in one of these like costumes, you know, like a big full body dinosaurs. And then I'm like peering inside and you're like, you know, you can see me in here. And that particular quality as well is one of the core intimacies I think you can have. Is when all of the pulleys, you know, like Wizard of Oz, he's behind the curtain, he's got all these pulleys to make his creatures go, and all the magic and smoke and mirrors. And finally, and it's a very vulnerable state, but there's also a huge relief that people can stop with all the pretense and stop all the effort of holding up these effigies of themselves to somehow placate the gods of every other person. And that was one of the other qualities I think that we shared, and you commented on, you know, in my presence. And one of the things that we came together through was that seeing each other in the nakedness of the inner cell, and a real decency comes about in people because of that. That was one of the key aspects that allowed me to fall in love with you, because you were on the other side of things. You were very like blah, pop, crazy, bam, you know, like your voice, your appearance, and your like humor and everything like that. And it's very appealing, but it's also a showman aspect. And when we started to come into the stillness, and there was this real like groundedness and levelness, and that was on our trip to the snow. That was really where the love, I think, really started to land in. That kind of stillness is a place that you can exist together in a sustainable way.
Yeah, so I know about this trip to the snow that you just slightly mentioned there, but and that sort of way is jumped into the relationship. But I'm curious to hear, where were the moments, and maybe you had separate moments of like, okay, I think it's time that person puts their hand in mine and we hang out more
it's
often.
Funny, Paisley, because which episode were we talking about 13 trips?
Maybe the second episode, because I was talking about how I met you and somewhat Atlas.
That's right. And it was also on your birthday recently, where we were talking about 13 trips and how we all met each other, right? And all that stuff, remember? Just recently.
Yeah.
So that was around the time that Atlas and I were starting to like, you know, change the shape of our relationship, because I was running these series of nights called 13 Trips, where it was kind of like an experimental music night, where I was like, I don't even know what I was doing. I was just trying to make something different and new. And I was like, I don't want it to just be a regular gig. I want to have this and that and that. So I got Atlas on board to consult and just give me his ideas, because I was like, you're the most creative person I know. I want your ideas. How can I make this fresh? And that's when we started hanging out. And that's also around the time that I met you. So it's really interesting. And then I remember, because I was going through a breakup, I was breaking up with my ex-partner, and I was in a very vulnerable place because I didn't want to let go of that relationship. But at the same time, my spirituality was waking up, and I had been disconnected from my myself for a long time, trying to be this, I got a major record label, I'm in, you know, like there was all of these masks that I was wearing, and I was fucking exhausted. I just had a fucking huge mental breakdown. So I was like getting my life back together, you know, I was like on my spiritual path. I was like, I want to heal my life. And then I brought Atlas into my life. And I just remember a couple of the conversations that we had. Like one of the biggest things, I was like, fuck, this person is really decent, just like really pure and wholesome. And that is such a rare quality in people these days. You just don't see it. Like mostly like especially in the music industry and the entertainment industry, like everyone kind of communicates through like, you know, snide remarks and jabs and sarcasm. And that was my reality. It's like everyone's always taking the piss or paying each other out or putting each other down, or you have to just be wacky or whatever. It's like so much bullshit. And I was so fucking over it. And when I started to get to know Atlas, I was like, oh, fuck, it's so relieving to just be around you. And just, I could let down all that shit. And actually, I felt like, oh, like you see me for my innocence, for my wholesomeness, for my heart, you know, and that was something that I hadn't experienced. It was really fucking new. And so that was kind of like where I started to go, I think I want this person. So I'm a pursuer, I'm a hunter archetypally. And when I decide that I want something, I will then just set out and go and get it. And that's what I did.
Fair enough. I love it.
It's true. Yeah.
I was like, all right, what's your next gig? I'm going to be there. I don't really know about this shit, but I'm going to be there, and you're going to know that I'm interested, and I'm just going to do this. I'm going to find out what your relationship status is. I was just like very methodical about it.
Yeah, I think I was also it's kind of a similar phase. I was also at the tail end of a long-term relationship. Actually, my longest relationship, a 6-year relationship. So when we met each other, we were both in relationships, and then they shortly after that kind of dissolved. And I just remember, and it wasn't just because I had bad boundaries, but to own up to the fact I did have bad boundaries back then. They can still do some work, but they're getting better. But I just really like to say yes. I mean, to live life as an improviser.
Yeah.
When there's an offer, a bold offer, and you were bold and you did come to, and it was also so nice, I guess, talking about relationships and the different dynamics we have in pairings. I had a wonderful relationship before that, but one of the qualities in my previous relationship was the idea of a dearth of time, like a lack of landing together. I remember this person would arrive and tell me, oh, like, just so you know, we have to leave early tonight or whatever. So even when spending time, there's like, oh, I know you're about to go. It was never just sort of landed. And I remember, even though Alpha and I went together at the time, when you came to my gigs or you came to a 24-hour hackathon we were doing, and you hung out until like 3 a.m. or something, or you just
I had nowhere to be.
Yeah, you just were like, yeah, I'm here. And I was like, wow, it's so landed. It felt like, and there's such a richness in it. It's like this abundance of presence, almost to the point you can waste it. Like I was doing other things and you were hanging out with other people in some other room where they're painting things or doing whatever they're doing, and it's like, oh, you're around. Like I don't, whereas before it was like, I've got to convince this person or entertain or prove a worth of spending time together, where you were just there. So that was a really key quality that I really appreciated. And then, you invited me to the snow, and just to say yes, and, when someone comes up and goes, yo, do you want to have this adventure? And for me, it was like, wow, Alpha Mama, this person is being paid to perform in the snow, which for me was already a magical thing. Like the snow, I'd only been in it once when I was a child. It was just life. And I thought, well, say yes to this offer. And so from that offer, there was definitely some kind of importance or exclusiveness. Like you could take one person and you chose me to go to the snow with. But it was on that drive. And I remember very distinctly pulling up at a petrol station and you got out to fill up. And I think I got out just to get some space or something. And I think I may have, when you're drunk and you speak to yourself out loud, I think I actually might have said, no, I think I love her. That was the moment where I kind of let myself, because we've been driving for hours and talking and, in those little cubicles, I think those kind of environments when you can't get away from each other are some of the most human and relaxed and best times. You know, when you're just going like on a long holiday and you just, you know, there's no social etiquette, there's no need to.
That's actually, to be honest with you both, they are my favorite moments of friendship or relationship with you both. Like we've been on so many long drives together, all of us.
It's true.
Yeah.
And you two are the only people, probably you and Nadine, she's the only other person, that I can drive for hours and hours and not ever feel like I need to get away from you. Like it just feels like I could talk to you about anything. We never run out of things to say, things to do. We're never bored. Like you three are my only people that I can do that with.
Yeah, such a deepening of relationships, a big road trip, just looking forward and like talking to one another.
Yeah.
Maybe some other things as well. But
mangoes.
No doubt. But you know, I think that was one of the key things, because I remember that moment as well. So just for context, I had a gig in the snow and I could bring someone, and like Atlas and I, we weren't even romantic at this stage. We were just friends. And I was like, I'm gonna ask if he wants to come. You know, that's a big move to like just ask someone to go to the snow, stay in the same cabin, sleep in the same bed, right? I was like, fuck it. But this is the kind of person I am. I'm just like, take risks and it happens or it doesn't. And so he said yes. We get in the car and we're driving and we're having instantly these really fucking deep and dropped in conversations. And up until that point, there had been no one in my life who could actually meet me at that level or like duplicate my communication with the exactness and understand my reality and the way I express myself and the way I think. And it was such a like, holy shit, like this is a fucking connection I've never felt before. It felt like a very like the intellectual and spiritual connection that I just knew, oh, there's something magical about this. And I don't know what it is yet, but I want this forever. I remember having that thought, like, I don't know if it's romantic or whatever, but I want this forever.
I love you. That's so awesome. Yeah, it's very daring to have immediate acknowledgement of importance like that. And that's one thing I absolutely love about you, Sam, is you are so open. And again, even, you know, if in the past you've been hurt or this or that, you show up and you go, but this time it might be different. And it's a kind of reverence where you allow your heart to be torn open again and again. And you did that with me as well. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I feel like it's like fast forward to the times where my heart was torn open when I was lying on the kitchen floor in God Queen headquarters, crying my fucking eyes out. I thought I was dead.
I gotta fess up. I'm pretty crap at exiting relationships. Like I really do callous things, and like even up to this day, I'm not good at the exit rate. I'm really good at starting things, and as a creator, I guess as we're good at creating. I'm really good at the story and the dedication and the devotion and the magic and the adventures and all of that. And then I'm very cumbersome leaving on the way out.
I feel you.
Well, I definitely, I think that's a very important part that we'll get to of like exiting, you know, because I think that's something people are looking for and something that's quite unique between the two of you. But I do want to find out, you know, I know stories about the snow trip, but as you got together, there was a certain explosion of uniqueness between you two that you both got to explore to a really radical extent. So I'm curious to hear on both your sides, what was that made Atlas, then Bravo Child, and Alpha Mama the unique couple that was really expressive and finding love and a relationship that was just never had before?
Well, I can start. Like our connection was like this fucking soulmate whirlwind, you know. It was like we just got catapulted in this love blizzard, and both of us were just like, this is amazing, let's fucking do it. So in the snow, there was a particular moment where I remember I made a love heart shaped snowball, and we both were like, all right, we're gonna like make a wish or, put an intention out there and we're going to just throw it out into, the universe. And my intention was, I want to be in a relationship with this person forever. And it wasn't like I want to be married or I want to like be boyfriend and girlfriend. I was like, no, I want to be connected with this person forever. That's my intention. I threw that out. And then we spoke about creating a relationship that was going to allow for our changing natures and our flexibility, and the fact that, we're free spiritual beings. And so we coined a term called meristem, which, we didn't coin the term, we stole it from plant biology, essentially. So meristem are like the stem cells of a plant that can become whatever part of the plant it needs, so it has the ability to change and adapt. And so that's where SAMRAM comes from. It's like, I think it stands for stem apical meristem and root apical meristem, SAMRAM for short. And we wanted to create a container for our relationship that was never like solid and fixed. It was always going to serve us and who we were in any given moment, so that we could be what the other person needed, and not kill ourselves in trying to, hold some old definition of relationship. And having that there, it just kind of immediately just opened up so much life, just like came pouring in. And I was like, holy shit, all of these parts of me that I've been hiding for so long are now coming back online, like my fucking weirdo, my like full yes. What does it look like when I can run fast towards someone? What does it look like when I can like actually like remember that I'm a spiritual being? And we started having crazy fucking like past life, like memories come up. Like it was crazy, the shit that was happening to us. And we were both just like blown away by everything that was coming to the surface. I had never experienced that before. Like there was a moment where we were both staring into each other's eyes and we both had very vivid, clear memories of knowing each other in past lives and the stories of what those lives, like who we were to each other. And, it was like crying and it was fucking full on.
Yes. I was feeling into, as you're talking, all the different layers that made our signature pairing. And definitely the art was part of it, the color and the childlike wonder and like fizzy sherbet kind of gusto for life. But then definitely that spiritual seeking, which is quite a serene energy in juxtaposition to the childlike human, giggly, finger poke, kind of tongue poking vibe. And also a gutsiness, like the fact that you said you're a hunter, you just came and got what you want. I really feel there's a groundedness to that as well, and a reverence. Even though we're spiritual, there is a certain irreverence to the way that we approach things, because we're continually stripping away the self-centered importance of humanity, which continues to try and make ourselves a big part of a picture, which is actually way bigger than us. So I think we keep on like calling out the emperor's clothing, which we respect in each other. And a deep decency, like one of the qualities that I noticed in you is your generosity. Like you're just a waterfall of giving. And even right from those first times, you'd be like paying for things. And definitely through our relationship, I think it became unhealthy, where I'd just be kind of like your roadie, and I just like cruise around. And I started doing less and less. And I was basically just like your side bitch, in not like in a romantic way, but just since I'd like travel around with you on tour, and I was doing nothing, just cruising. You're paying for everything. I was living in your house, and your generosity kind of got the better of me. But that largesse, I think that people that just give and pour themselves out into life have this seeming unkillability or limitlessness, because they just and there's more and there's more and there's more and there's more. So yeah, there's definitely that co-musing, could you say? Like we're muses for each other, we're inspiring each other. I can't remember how this whole thing happened, but at one stage I remember climbing onto your balcony because
I was just thinking about that.
What happened there? How did that happen?
No, you surprised me, because basically as soon as we started like seeing each other, we were inseparable. Like it was just like every fucking second we were together, right? And then I think Atlas went home for like a day or something, and I was like, all right, cool, we should try and have some time apart or whatever. And then the next thing you know, he's dressed as a superhero on my balcony. And it's shit like that I just like, I love the yes and like the just, you know, it's like whenever you're in a relationship, usually there's someone who's a bit more invested than the other person. It tends to be like that. And you're both like, oh, we'll play it cool, you know, until we both know. But with us, it was just like we were both fucking in the deep end. Like our first proper date that Atlas took me on, we went to Bondi, and he had booked out, you know, one of the rooms in Bondi Pavilion where it's like all glass walls. And he brought a boombox, a speaker, and put all these mats out. And essentially our first date was just like, we're going to dance here in this room. We're just going to just experiment and just fucking see what happens. Like no one had ever done that for me ever. I was so at the edge of my comfort zone. It was either like rise to the occasion and expand or crumple and fail, you know, but I was like, oh, fuck that. I'm going to rise. And it was like the most mind-blowing date and experience. And then we went swimming in the like deep ocean off like North Bondi Rocks. And like, I'm a chicken shit. Like, you know this about me. I'm a fucking chicken shit. Like I am. But when you're in that state with someone where you're just like, holy shit, like you're in this heightened state of, you know, of like love drugs, you will push yourself to, you know, because it's like, I don't know what it is, but it's just like a particular combination of us really made us do amazing things that we could not do by ourselves, you know. So when we were together, we found ourselves like doing things that we always wanted to do but couldn't do. You know, one of the things that I know I unlocked for Atlas was like Atlas always talked about wanting to see the world, you know, wanting to adventure, wanting to do this, but couldn't do it until we were in relationship. And then we went on a whole, you know, whirlwind adventure around the world.
I was thinking about that to answer the question, you know, the change a person brings in you. And that was one of the key things with Alpha is, and you still to this day do it, is you connect me up with the mechanics of the real world. You have such a faith in my artistry and my whimsy and my ideas and my potential. You keep landing it. You're like, I'm not, and you keep saying that I'm not going to give up on you. And so you really, took me around the world and also permitted me to be quote unquote bad, like we were polyamorous. It was the first relationship where I was kind of ethically and in a balanced way polyamorous, and, you know, tried drugs for the first time in my life. And we're just like really on an edge, and a gritty, real edge, and that interface with the reality, which was quite sheltered, like growing up, and my artistry, it definitely had an innocence and a playfulness to it. But you landed me in the real world, in the adult world, and gave me permission to be that aspect to myself.
Oh my God. So I'm just having a moment where I don't know if I dreamt this, if it's really, really something one of you have told and I've always wanted to know more about, was when it was triggered by Atlas's bad guy thing. And this is possibly quite incriminating, but, you know, this is all allegedly, this has happened. Did someone like steal a purse or some money or something when he was overseas in New York? Like it was like, okay, I'm really going to be a bad guy. I'm going to rob someone or something.
I think you're mixing. I mean, maybe you might want to speak on this Simon, but no, I think this might be a cross of stories. I don't think that happened while we were touring together. This is probably a moment in my life where for 24 hours, so I'm like squeaky clean, uber
You
wholesome.
are so awesome.
Yeah, never done. Like I hated the concept of even saying something that wasn't untrue, or even to myself making a promise. If I said I'm going to, you know, kick this ball 100 times off the ground, I'd stay for hours until it happened. Like I had this real kind of integrity, nobility. And then some point in my life, I was in a situation where I felt quite degraded, and a switch went off for me. And it's really interesting. When you're treated a certain way, you're backed into a corner. I think we've got different responses. I've got like a baseline of being like of self-deprecation and being humiliated. And then I just snap into like, fuck this, and rise up, which I think you have this too, Samram. Like you'll be in grief and down, and at some point you're like, whoa, you pull yourself up. So I was in a context where I was being treated like a criminal and felt quite degraded. And I just was like, that's it, fine. You want me to be a criminal? Like I totally wasn't. I'll do that. And for 24 hours, just for 24 hours of my life, I decided to see what it was like. And I just shoplifted and bag snatched and just like did, and I was quite good at it. It was quite effortless to walk that path. But that was probably what you're thinking of.
Okay. Cool. Beautiful. I'm glad I know about this, and we can talk more about that another time. But let's bring back into the relationship. And what I'm hearing a lot of is like, these moments, as someone that knows alpha, where you're like, I could picturing you out in a deep ocean. It's still to this day, you may have done it then, but it's going to take a lot. I've seen moments, and eventually you have that, like, you go through all the different emotions. There's only been one time that I've seen you not push through.
Yeah, that's still to date my most humiliating moment ever.
What was
the day
that?
I let down humanity. You remember?
We went to, I think we were together at the time, and we went out to Guatemala, which is in the Royal National Park, and there's like a cliff that you can jump off into the water. And I took Alpha there, and we were there for like a good 2 hours, just sitting on the edge of the cliff, and Alpha Mama going through every single like emotion. There was a crowd of people like cheering her on, little kids like coming up and being like, "I'll jump with you." Other girls coming up like, "I would jump with you. I'll show you that it's okay." Like everyone there was on Alpha Mama's, and it was making it even worse. She's like, God,
couldn't do it. I psyched myself out so hard too, because I said things like, this is a symbol. If I can break through this moment, then I'll be able to achieve all the things I want to achieve. It's for humanity. It's for the world. And I couldn't fucking do it.
I tried everything as well. I tried every clearing. I tried every like psychology thing. It just was not happening. It was the only time like I've seen Alpha Mama just all the way, lack of a better term, bitch out on that one.
This is a good segue, because when Atlas and I were together early on, there was a moment, we were all at Woodford Folk Festival, and I had flown Atlas's best friend out from South Africa or somewhere at the time. I was just spoiling him rotten. I was just like, fuck yeah, like we were living this life. And then I remember it was a new relationship. We were at Woodford. We went to this waterhole with the kids. We were all there, and there was this like little cliff that you can dive off. And I remember like thinking, this is fucking dangerous. This is really dangerous.
That's right.
And I felt so uncomfortable about, because he's going to jump off this high thing, and there's like rocks underneath, and I was like, this is really fucking dangerous. And I could just feel like this anxiety in my body. And that was one of like the defining moments in our relationship of like, I love this person, but I have to respect his sovereignty enough to trust that, he's going to make his own decisions, and he might die. He might make a really dumb decision and he might die. But if he does that, at least he died in his own freedom, and I can love him in him choosing his life fully, like knowing that life is more important than our relationship. Like that's a core thing that we could never lose. And I think that's probably what makes us friends, like you and me, Paisley, and you and me, Samram. It's like life is above our human to human relationship. Life is first. That's our loyalty.
It's one of the most beautiful gestures, and you made it to me throughout our relationship in different contexts. But it is wild. It's a wild acceptance. It's a wild, noble eye to eye being seen. And it is one of the biggest elixirs and remedies of something that I think really is a malady, a sickness, a crippling effect of so many relationships, is where you don't feel you have that freedom. And to some degree, there's ownership, but it's like the person doesn't value your life. They don't see you at your utmost, that exquisite, complete right we have to commune with life itself. And I remember seeing you down there, and to be honest, it was a stupid cliff to jump off. When I jumped, it was too close, and I remember landing. I mean, this is like, I don't know how many meters, but it's like a good velocity coming down, and I skimmed the rock. I remember like I had my hand just back like this, and it went down the edge of the rock. So it was like, we were talking very close. It wasn't a good decision, but you let me make a stupid decision. And I remember you being down there also with my son. It was you and Elijah down there on this rock, just looking up. And I just felt like backed. You back me. Like I back your decision, not because not because I believe in it, because I think it's a good idea, but because it's your decision. I back you in your freedom. And yeah, that was really beautiful. And it's this ultimate compersion, it's this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something I've found so important in my relationship now, is to really make sure I honor those moments of like, hey, I really want to recognize and acknowledge that this is something that may not be normal. And I just really want to let you know I am grateful that you are appreciating me and honoring me and letting me be me right now. I'm really grateful, and that's what I'm seeing and hearing so much in this relationship, and that bond of Samram that is signified in the snow of like, this is how we're going to grow, like we want to grow and this transform for actualizing ideas and creating explosive art like never before, and going into the most like unfathomable forms of spirituality and being a bit taboo in those areas, and polyamory. I'm curious to hear, in all of that like epicness and accepting, where did the cracks start to show up of like, oh, actually I can't accept that.
Where did the wheels fall off?
Yeah.
I mean, for me to own it, I feel like I put the first crack in the beautiful vase that was holding the bouquet of our love. And it comes from this thing which I'm still working through. Like I still have behaviors which come from like a little boy in a candy shop kind of vibe, where it's like, I have something I really want, say for example, the lollies. And I know that on my own steam, I can't afford to buy it. So if there's a moment where like the cookie jar's open, or there's like some loophole in the wording around the rules of this moment, I'm not going to get another opportunity. So I'm just going to grab and deal with the consequences later, because that experience is so important. So that it goes against grace, and elegance and grace is one of my highest ideals, because I think it leads to a lot of other qualities in life. So there was a woman who I'd had like friendship with, and on and off kind of like definitely a romantic connection, but never sort of stepped into it. And Alpha was in an unhealthy way now promoting my freedom. Just saying, fine, just go, and like, I know this, like this energy between you, go do it, go do whatever you want, just get it over with kind of vibe.
Which, for anyone listening at home, if your partner's saying, fine, go do it, energetically, they don't want you to do it.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, well, you said it. And then I remember I was like walking out the door, and then I think that one of the last things you said to me was like, oh, take a condom or something like that.
Yeah.
Which for me is like, whoa, she means like I can do anything. And so, yeah, not graceful, not responsible, not a good way to do polyamory. But that was the time when I feel a real, bruising happened that I don't think we ever recovered from, because up to that point, even though we were talking about freedom and probably, talked about polyamory, we're still very monogamous in our energy, and we still felt very sacred and safe, and yeah, we were the focal point of each other's outward energies. And so then I didn't sleep with this person, but I mean, I can say what I do.
I picked him up after his date, right? Because I'd gone out, and actually I was out with one of your friends too. And I picked him up in the car and breathing, I'm like, all right, cool. So what happened? He's like, I didn't sleep with her. I'm like, okay. But I went down on her.
I think my words were,
I just went down.
I thought it was great. I was like, don't worry. Because for me, there was this real hierarchy of, probably also quite an adolescent thing of like, well, sleeping is the worst thing as far as a partner goes. Yeah. So I was like, no, I was like happy. I was like, no. Like
we only went to third base. So it wasn't a home run.
I didn't even have sex though. I just went down.
I didn't even use the condom. It's so good.
and it was just like,
I just went. Look, I also.
Can we go to that moment though? Can we like be in that moment for a moment and really?
Oh yeah.
Share the inner realities in both your worlds of like Atlas maybe feeling like I fucked up, and Alpha like I can't believe you done that.
It was awful. And I think one of the problems was that before we got into a relationship, we had spoken about polyamory, we'd spoken about, because we both had enough intellectual or conceptual understanding of polyamory and freedom, and we knew that we had the capacity to love multiple people. We knew that about each other. But then when we got into a relationship and we felt like the intensity, we were like, oh, we don't need that, it'll just be us kind of thing. And then maybe 3 months in is when Atlas started, I guess like sharing that there were more desires that he wanted to experience, like experiences that he wanted to have. And that's when the thing happened. And so I was wrestling with my own demons, one of them being this fucking happy family fantasy, which is, you would know, Paisley, it's one of my most savage demons that I'm tortured by. And it's the conditioning that I'm supposed to be with one person and have a fucking happy family. And that's what I thought that we were creating together. And so when that happened, it felt like my whole fucking internal world, or everything this whole future that I'd created in my mind of this, finally I'm going to have the perfect family, it just fucking broke in that instance.
And breaking things wrecks me because I like perfection, like wholeness, completion, and I felt like I'd done something in that moment which could not be undone. It's like it will never be the same again. We can never have that open-hearted purity when we look in each other's eyes. I can never feel like I can fully just flow everything into you, and all of my communication and touch is nectar to you. Like there's something tainted, and even if you fall back in love with me or forgive me, there'll still be some part of you deep down that doesn't trust me or can never wholly feel loved again. Like there was some kind of pivotal destruction of our wholeness.
And when you realized like how upset I was, I remember the shift in your energy, because up until that point I was quiet, because when I'm processing things, you both know I can't immediately, I'm not very calm, oh, thanks for telling me. It's, but I'm just like, and it's all fucking crumbling, and it's like, and I'm furious and I'm upset and I'm distraught, but I can't, I've come a long way in learning how to communicate when I'm extremely overwhelmed emotionally. But at that time, I would shut down and I would just go silent, and I didn't know what to say. And I think I said something to you like it's broken now, or something like that, along the lines of I don't know if I want this. I don't know if I want to live like this. I don't know if this is going to work for me. And that's when you realize that you'd fundamentally shifted, something in our universe, and you were just like, oh, like the regret and the remorse came in. It was heavy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's something that I want to speak out to those people who struggle with polyamory or even cheating, this idea of being with more than one person. And it's not necessarily, one way or the other. It's not right, it's not wrong. It's not just our desires, it's not just society. But there is this mismatch of desires in society, particularly when there's a joy in connecting with people, particularly when it's an abundance. As artists, I think we're very creative and we get caught up in wanting to make beauty for people. And when we're embodied, there's this real primal sense of urgency, importance, survival nature, discovery, connection with God in sensuality as well. Even if it's not sexuality, it can become quite an important thing. You can say, well, how in a moment can you wreck an entire relationship for this little fling with someone? But I just want to speak out to, it's not for those people that really are really affected. And I think a lot of artists make quite, potent lovers, because we feel and we are curious and we are activated in our senses and we like the unusual and we appreciate the beauty and the tragedy, like the divine and the humanness, and particularly in intimacy, this rawness. It's like you're witnessing the best art house scene ever when people, it's really important. And so to be someone who has an abundance and then a joy, particularly around women, I just love women. I love the intrinsic spirituality. I love the nurturing holding. I love the delight and this kind of aspect of spring and up and possibility that comes through. And so to hold these things, which are not sex, but they're great drives, and to want to share time with this particular person, for example, who also just a great buddy, and we're going on adventures. I remember before there was any intimacy, we were climbing through this tunnel, and there was like a head torch, like Indiana Jones, and we found this discarded wooden boat, this yacht. So we like climbed over a fence, and then there was this boat like dry docked on its side, and so it was this really unusual, amazing life experience. And so for all of that goodness, quote unquote, for all of that life, for all of that creativity, for all that hope, for all that adventure, to clash and be such a destructive force in something that's sacred and precious, aka the relationship you're in, there's this real dissonance, and it's hard to marry the two, because to honor these two important things is impossible simultaneously unless you're in a really well-balanced polyamorous relationship. So I just wanted to put this call out to people who are struggling with that, to say, I understand, and there is a beauty in trying to fulfill these callings. And I think that is something that we need to inquire really deeply into, because otherwise what we're doing is we're castrating and we're taming. There's some of the most important parts of our humanity which we're not integrated, result in bar brawls and rape culture and just suicide because of depression and numbness, like dullness and pointlessness in life, because the fruit of whimsy, of creativity, of adventure, like all that I was experiencing that moment was quote unquote wrong, because it led to me being like I said, fidelity or breaking a relationship. So it's just such an important thing that life plus life sometimes equals death, which is a really hard thing to sit with.
I also want to add to that, because I have to admit, and you would both know, like I have been extremely like ungracious in the way that I navigate my jealousy when it arises. Because I'm a very passionate, fiery person, it in the way that I speak, in the way I love, and I'm like very like rah. And when I feel slighted, when I feel betrayed, it doesn't even have to be a real betrayal. When I perceive that I've been betrayed, when I perceive that I'm unimportant, when I perceive that I'm not the most important thing in the world, I will fucking like lose my shit, and I'm awful in those moments, and I'm savage, and I've been really shit at dealing with these things. Conceptually, I love the idea of polyamory, but only when I'm doing it.
That's a key part. There's a couple of things I just want to speak to. I don't want to cut you off though, but you just sparked a couple of things. One is the idea, as you said, when I'm doing it, it's great. And why is that? I think it's because we have the direct experience of the beauty in the connection. Yeah. It's innocent. It's consenting. It's a creation. So from the inside of polyamory, in the personal experience, unless you're laden with guilt, but if you're really allowing yourself to have the moment, it is quite innocent, actually. And I remember when we were in Germany, and then you went off with this other particular person who was a really great person. I actually really loved him. He was so respectful and amazing guy that I'd like to just have as a friend. And you guys fully checked in with me. And you're actually really good at making sure that the current partner feels honored. If you're going to go and expand the relationship out, like I really give such great thanks for you in that respect. So you checked in with me, and it was, explicitly fine. And yet, when you were away that night, even though that particular night you didn't end up sleeping with him, the darkness, the sordid nature, particularly of his intentions, the way that I thought he was, manipulating you or debasing you, it's so warped, because I wasn't there. I was there was this huge void, no information. You were away for the entire night. I didn't sleep like at all that night. And I tarnished it. From the other side, when you're not doing it, you can make it such a betrayal. And yet when you're in the moment, it's actually nothing. You're not disrespecting. You're not pulling your love away from the person you're in a relationship with. You're not comparing like, oh, when I'm doing this with this person, it's so much better than blah. It's actually not at all. You're so grateful that you've got a relationship that you can be free. And then you're in this beautiful little creation. And that's a really interesting thing. I think it's so important to have both experiences if you are going to start to go into that space, and see how beautiful and innocent and in many ways unimportant Like not to devalue the sex and connection, but you can have a little flittering experience, but it's really the long-term deep relationships that really change you. Like having a little moment of intimacy is kind of neither here nor there.
I think for me, my sickness and what I've been journeying through, for many years and getting a lot better is like, it's like my addiction to being significant, like my significance. And what happens is I make everything about me. And that's where things become toxic. Like if my partner is having a loving experience, a life-changing experience with someone else, if I'm not there, or if it's like I find a way to make it about me. It's like, oh, I can't, you love journeying with this person and adventuring, and they like to climb trees with you and jump off waterfalls, but I can't do that. So it's about me. It's like, oh, this person is more feminine or more sexually liberated than I am, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm not that. So it's like everything becomes a weapon against myself, and that's where the sickness is. The same with you, Paisley, when we were together and you're having these amazing experiences with people that I'm sitting at home feeling like shit because I'm making it about me, and it's not fucking about me. And I've really been working on that a lot, to just separate. It's like, holy shit, not everyone's fucking world has to revolve around me. Like, mind blown,
And that one quality as well can be flipped on the other side. And, I don't want to make this, the archetypal male versus female. This goes out to anyone in any gender relationship on any side of any equation. But if we don't make it about ourselves, because I was thinking you were saying you have been, quote unquote, in your own words, like terrible with your jealousy. But I think you're in the moment, you could be very heated, but really you do come around and come to a beautiful space of empathy and compassion quite quickly. But in the moment when there is hostility against us, can we also make it not about us? Even when ultimately it is, like in that moment, okay, I went out and did an action which directly upset you. But obviously, there are many components to that hurt. It's partly to do with the action, but it's also partly to do with what it means, and possibly partly to do with other previous relationships. But I think if we have that one aspect, it's not about me. We can take turns to be in the subjective, envelopment of our emotions. If I had just been able to say, cool, in this moment, it's important that I just witness your pain and I'm there with you in it. And it was not about me, even though my action stirred it. This is not about me. That is one of the best tools that I created actually in later relationships, was the ability to sit, and it's almost like you shift identities. It's like I become this third counselor person. You're attacking the identity that was me a moment ago, and I just let that mannequin be in the room. And then I shift out and I go, okay, cool, I hear you. And I become objective rather than subjective about it. That is so healing, because often nothing has to be solved or changed, but just being present with the true effects that have happened, and in the communication it heals itself. But when we're defending, we're kind of like shoving the cork back in their expression. No, but this, I didn't mean it like that, and we're trying to make it better, but we're really just putting fuel on the fire, and it's so frustrating. It's like not about you.
I feel like my biggest wound in that is like, I can do that to an extent, but usually it's with someone that knows me best, and when they're in that state, they're like, oh, you think you can just be a witness to this and not care about all these things that are upsetting me? Let me find that button that I know is going to trigger you and fight back, And
I've definitely done that with you.
Like, I wasn't name dropping, but yes.
Injustice. That's one of the things I think is really hard to sit with, is injustice and untruth. And when your partner is naming things or warping things or misrepresenting your intention behind things, is a natural thing to go, but no, it's so unfair. That's totally not, So to be able to sit with that complete injustice in the moment is, that's like monk style. That's at the heart.
And honestly,
the game you and I did, Alpha, one that did work for us, was just like, you have 5 minutes, and just ring it off for 5 minutes, and then you have 5 minutes to respond. So it's just like, if you're boiling up, you're like 10, 9, 8.
You're gonna have your turn.
They're gonna shut up in 3, 2, 1. Well, but like, 100%. Just a timer to go. Okay.
Well, I was going to say, Paisley, one of the most memorable experiences you and I ever had together was when, so I was journeying Dancing Eros at the time, which is feminine archetypal work. and I had just come home, or maybe it was the day before I'd done the maiden activation. Now, you know, the maiden was the hardest archetype for me because my maiden is very wounded. You know, there's lots of like fucking bullshit stories I've got flying around there. And I don't like to show people my vulnerability, except I fucking do. I love it. But it was very toxic. Anyway, so I had just reconnected, you know, with the innocence of the maiden, who's very emotional, and she just wants to be loved and seen for, you know, all of her emotions and all her depth and everything she is. And I was feeling really insecure with you at the time. And I remember I was trying to share, and I was intellectualizing everything, you know, like I wanted you to see how I was feeling, but I kept putting it through my mind and trying to explain how I was feeling with like all these words, and it just wasn't landing, and it was so frustrating. And I remember just saying to you, I feel like I just need to go into my maiden and share from that place. And you're like, okay. And I did, and it was like the most fucking cathartic, liberating experience ever, because you just listened, and I was fully in my little girl, and I was like, and I'm afraid you're gonna leave me, and then you're just gonna, and I was like, all of my abandonment wounds, and I was just like speaking from that pain, from that place. I didn't need you to reassure me or say anything. I just needed you to hear me and just like really fucking listen. It was like the sweetest medicine, and I felt so like free afterwards. I was like, oh shit, I actually got to say the fucking thing.
Yeah,
you
the
know?
core thing. Yeah, because I think before that, this is meant to be a podcast about you and Atlas, but here we are, is it all ties in, is like, I think before that, one of the biggest wounds was in our polyamory was when I wasn't with you, majority of the women that I were with were very strong in the maiden archetype, or at least able to be projected as like, well, her archetype that she's strongest is the maiden, and you only want maidens, and my maiden isn't this, you know. And it was like projecting, and then that in that moment you're like in your maiden, and was like, yeah, I'm just scared you're gonna leave, you know, I feel this, I feel that. And that was when I was like, oh, like it's not Paisley, you're making me, you're doing this. It's I feel that, I feel this. And I was like, oh, like, no, I'm not going to leave you. It's okay, you know, at the end, you know, and like, thank you for sharing. Yeah.
It makes such a difference when we can learn how to communicate our feelings from a place of ownership, not like you always abandon me and you always let me down. And it's like that rarely brings about you know, a willingness in the other person to, you know, to let their guard down. But when we can learn to share from like, this is my pain, this is my wound, this is my emotion, I want you to know how I feel, I want you to witness me in it, but it's, you know, but it's like from a place of like, no, I know this is mine, I know that it's from me, it's in me. It's a very powerful shift.
Then from there, I'm curious where you had that seed moment where Atlas went to third base, didn't use the condom, but sort of broke the relationship, and sort of like pulling a hair out of the nose kind of feeling. Where did that continue to spiral into, if it was a spiral?
Well, for me, like that incident, I clocked on very quickly that one of Atlas's high values is experiences, and it's a love language for him. So Atlas, when he's in love with you and he wants to express his love, he will create a magical experience for you. You know, there were so many moments in our relationship where I'd come home from tour, my room would be full of helium balloons and like love notes everywhere, and I have to go and, you know, like all of this stuff. That's the way that he loves. So I was like, all right, cool. If I'm boring, if I get complacent, I'm going to lose my man. You know, that's like what my mind was like calculating. I was like, all right, I need to make sure that he feels nourished and feels like he's getting his needs met in the experiential realm. So I kind of went into like, all right, you want a threesome? I'll fucking hook up a threesome for you, you know? So I went into like, I'm going to create experiences for him. Because I also knew that like I'd been through a few relationships already. I'd done things, and he had only had maybe like 2-3 relationships prior to me. So there were a lot of things that he hadn't had the opportunity to explore, and I wanted to gift him that. I wanted to, and it was comfortable for me to have those edgy experiences if I was in a facilitating role. Like if I could facilitate this experience for you, then I'm happy because it's still about me. You know what I'm saying? Like I can be there and I'm important. So that's kind of one of the ways that we made it work, and, you know, and sort of could play in that. And then, you know, then we were like, fuck, let's just bounce, let's get up out of here. This country will take our kids around the world. And we had some amazing experiences.
Some amazing experiences, but I think that also put the duress, which cracked. It's funny, it cracked, it broke, but then when we came back together, it was some of the best times of our relationship as well. So that, I mean, we can try and have a succinct retelling of that, but yeah, going away overseas, it was like we uprooted the bubble, because up to that point we'd been in Sydney where I didn't want to be, and there was a lot of kind of identity around the communities that we're attached to and who we were. And we did that farewell show called Okay Thanks Bye in that warehouse, and then we were free in the world, which was simultaneously liberating but also a bit deflating, because all of the people that we could show up as to our community was evaporated because we were just strangers in the world. So
we were nobodies in the world.
We were nobodies. Our impact in this unusual, we're just like two tourists. And then a lot of our relationship got put into being parents, because we both have a son. And so essentially we ended up becoming co-parents rather than co-pilots of life, which was really draining. And then the whimsy of being like Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn, barefoot skim wanderer of the world is less romantic when you're in a country you don't speak the language, you're not sure where you're going to sleep, and you literally have to ask an Airbnb place if you can stay on because you've completely run out of money. This was in Japan. We'd completely run out of money, and our plane, luckily we'd actually booked our flights ahead of time, so we knew if we could survive long enough to the plane to leave, we'd keep going on the tour. And we went to these people, we'd booked like a night or two. And it's kind of like those squatter Airbnb. It was like, we're paid for 2 nights and now we want to stay for a week. And we agreed to clean the house in exchange to stay on. And so, yeah, the romance of that kind of life quickly wears thin. And
when I think about that time in Japan, I still feel the trauma in my body. I get a massive wave of like upset. My body constricts. It was one of the most like
that was
upsetting
the worst
experiences.
That was the break. There was one particular moment we went for a walk, and I remember, you crying and shouting, and we're outside some kind of like fence. It felt like almost like community housing or something. It was harsh. The world felt like Eastern Bloc, just harshness. And there's something that happened in me, and I think this is also something I want to signal to other people if they feel it. There's this uncreate, there's this cold hardness where you just let something die on the pavement. And that's how I felt about the relationship. Like something could have been done, but I knew it was kind of gasping. It's like a fish out of water, and you could put it back in, but then you're going to have like a goldfish for another few months. Whereas if you just do nothing, in a couple of minutes, it's going to be quiet and over.
That was the thing that, Look, Alice and I have been in a relationship now, because even though we're not romantic partners, we're still in a relationship since like 2013. So it's a long time. So much has happened. Trying to condense it down is so difficult, but I do want to share the core the core wounds, I guess, of our relationship were in the realms of provision and like money and our children. And a lot of that came from, to be honest, my unhealed childhood traumas, like my unhealed, this I need a perfect family obsession, because I felt that my family was very dysfunctional growing up. And I felt like I failed to bring harmony to my family. So I was like constantly trying to do that. And for me, it was like, I felt like I was drowning in overwhelm, and I was stressed because I was the only one bringing in income and figuring out how to make money, because we couldn't survive. And if it was just me, I wouldn't mind so much, but it was like our children, and having to, like, my son wanting to eat some particular food and me having to say, no, we can't afford that. Like, broke my fucking heart. And I couldn't understand why you, Samram, were so unbothered about it. It couldn't make any sense to me why it didn't affect you the way it affected me, because for me that was painful. And because I was so stressed, I was a shit partner. Like I wasn't the happy, joyful, let's have adventures partner that you loved. I was fucking upset. I was heavy. And you have this thing in you where you don't allow people to bring you past a certain tone level. So like if someone tries to pick a fight with you, you don't react. Worst thing that will happen is you'll just go a bit bored and just like tune out, and that's it. And I was trying so desperately to provoke you in this moment because I wanted you to fucking care. I was like, step up. Where is my man? I need you to provide for us. I need you to make sure that we can survive. And you don't give a shit. And you're just this fucking clown that wants to just fly around the world. Like, don't you see I'm struggling? That was what broke it, because in the end, you were like, I think we should go our separate ways. When we get to Germany, I'll take Elijah and you take River. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? You just abandoned me, you know, instead of stepping up, you just fucking, and that was the piece that we continued to journey in our relationship over the next few years. You know, that was our big problem.
I'm only just starting to slowly integrate that now. Like I think it's matching wounds. Like you said, it was from your unintegrated childhood and trying to heal your family, but it totally was a perfect mismatch pain match for my inability to be a man, quote unquote, in the traditional sense. And this is something that I had an aversion to ever since as a teenager. I saw the alpha male, I saw the jock, I saw the blokey guy who liked footy and cars. I was like, I do not want to be that. And so I had this aversion to all of the usual provider protector aspects. And I've got the other things in abundance, like creativity, emotional sensitivity, all of the willing to sit down and talk in our fields, be with the flow. But this ability to have something stick in the real world, bricks and mortar, to show up and provide and protect financially, it's actually something I want to do, because as you do when you have money, you're so generous with it. It allows the abundance and flow. It's not money hungry or selfish. But you got to that pain point, and I think that my breaking point became like, it's an impotence. But rather than getting depressed about it, I just go into lethargy, which then looks like calmness and serenity, because I can't engage anymore. So I just die to it and I float away down the river.
But you have developed that skill, and I've seen you do it time and time again, where when you can't be pushed into the corner anymore, you don't lash out like a wounded animal like most people. They like, rah, you don't do that. You just kind of go, okay, I'm going here now. Yeah. And you just float away with like total love in your heart. And you're just like, yeah. And it's fucking amazing that you can do that.
And infuriating as well.
Yeah. Can you maybe take us to that moment of like going, okay, like let's go our separate ways, where you were at in comparison to where Alpha was at? Because obviously that's a big two separate realities happening at once.
I mean, to be completely open and transparent, I live what in the modern spiritual community would be called like a multi-dimensional kind of life. Like that's my reality. My whole life, I very much felt a remembering. I very much have this dual experience of life where I do feel a bit detached. And I guess from a theater director point of view, I very much sense the narrative that society is sort of enforcing on us, which is a lot of attachment to identity and rights and wrongs. And I really feel that current towing and tugging at me the whole time. And it's a fundamental premise. And I believe I've made this decision in some long forgotten time or realm or whatever it was. It feels like a spiritual edict or like command in myself is nothing is worth being trapped in. When I start to get woven into the narrative, I have these kind of this ramification. And of course, this sounds very like trauma, and it probably is to many layers, but that is the love that fills me in this moment. is the relief of not being stuck in a trap overrides all of the loss of the moment. So even if it's like a person that is fucking amazing, and Alpha is amazing, this highly intelligent, passionate, devoted, supportive, like, fuck, just what, like, it's harrowing to think that this amazing treasure of a person might be lost forever. So you've got to imagine the size of the relief that must be able to counteract such a loss. And that's simply what I feel is, I feel, there's a story here. And I think the piece in my psyche that happens is I'm not losing you. Because I think when you've known someone at such a core level, that is timeless for me. And we had tuned in, and also later on in America, we once again tuned in to this absolute timeless recognition of each other. And in those moments, you know that you love each other, so you don't feel rejected no matter what happens. And you know that there is an allegiance or a pact of some kind. So I didn't feel that I was losing Alpha in a spiritual sense. But all of the pain and the heaviness, which I now am building a better capacity to hold, but I had a huge aversion for much of my relationship life. As soon as someone felt like they were going to insidiously draw me down into a narrative, that is who I felt I was losing. And so that's why I made it easier. It's like I'm detaching from that version of yourself, or the story addicted part of yourself that needs so much from me and has a lot of expectations. And so I'm happy to put that down. And then I reconnect with life. And to be honest, it is through life that I will reconvene or re-meet that version of Alpha that I truly love. So it's like a trust, and you've got to, it's like if you're, I don't know what analogy I can make. You're at the pools and you're going to go to different change rooms, whatever. Like, I'm going to see you in the pool. Okay, cool. You've got to trust that they're not just going to disappear. So the same thing with these breakups, or what I would call probably reconfigurations of relationship, is if you make strong enough intentions, navigate by that. And this is really important. Say, for example, in today's modern era, where you can have gossip, you can have different political things happen, you might actually be physically separated from time to time. Go by your highest values, like life, and you'll end up together again, because you'll be at the local homeless shelter, and they're at the homeless shelter helping out. It's like, oh wow, we're here again, because we're relying to our highest values. And if in order to stay together, you have to violate those or go into a warped version of reality, which is not you, you're going to lose anyway, because you'll lose yourself, and they'll be still together with a different version of yourself. So I hope that made sense. It's kind of like an esoteric version, but that is kind of how it feels in my body, is like I'm choosing to detach from the part of you which is not the part I love, and ultimately I cannot be with, and instead choose the highest values which you also hold, and trusting that path is actually how we will walk together. And it might be on a different label, might not be husband, wife, or whatever it is, but that is actually the pact and promise we made when we first fell in love with each other, because we had an alignment of how we held love and life itself.
So I'm curious to hear, like, just to really cover what your point you're making right now is, if I put it against another analogy, because I don't want it to come off as spiritual bypass, because it does, like you said, it's a bit esoteric. If we put it into like a realer extent, trying to create some kind of parallel, is like you and Alpha Mama built a house together, and there's a moment where she's in the house and it's on fire, and she's like, our house is burning down. We need to grab these certain things out. We need to do something about it. Let's try and put it out. It sort of, to me, in a certain way, sounds like, I think I'm going to go get ice cream, and maybe we'll meet at a new house right now, because there's actually this new honeycomb, peanut butter, 1,000 M&Ms on it thing that I haven't tried yet. And it just feels like going into that burning house isn't really going to serve us right now.
You're like,
stressing me out.
That burning house is stressing me out.
Stressing me out. It doesn't feel like it's in my highest to go into a burning house right now, but I don't know what's going to happen to Alpha Mom, but I trust that she's going to make it out of this fiery house.
Like, yes. And also what it is, and this is why I love you so much, Samaram, is because it's like, the house doesn't fucking matter. Burn the house. Burn it. Let it fucking burn down to the ground. It's not worth fighting for when what we have is actually timeless, and the spirit of this house can never die. It doesn't fucking matter what you do to the house. Let everyone take everything. They can't take away what we have, and that that for me is what makes our relationship completely unfuckwithable, completely unshakable. It's what I have with both of you. It doesn't fucking matter what we go through, how much fire there is to put out. Like nothing can ever be taken from us, because we have this beyond time, beyond space, beyond human, beyond story, beyond fucking emotional reactivity, blah, blah, blah. Like we've already created that connection, and we know it and we feel it. And to be honest with you, you know, that's sometimes I forget. And sometimes I am very wrapped up in the story of human pain and suffering and like, oh, it's so, and everything's burning down. I'm going to lose everything. And it's like, as much as I gave to our relationship financially, you know, and I was the provider and, you know, quote unquote, in the gender roles, I was the providing husband or whatever. Like I was willing to do all of that because I received so much nourishment for my soul, you know, like to be able to receive like that kind of spiritual insight, to know that all of this fucking world is a story. Like you are an infinite spiritual being. You've lived like 100 gazillion times already. Like you're more powerful than anything that is trying to trap you. Like for me, like what is the price of that? You know, and that's what I received from our relationship. Like nobody had ever given me that kind of perception before. And that to me is invaluable.
Yeah.
Thank you. I love you. That's huge. And I want people to have that kind of timeless connection. And I think to bring it to something that's very tangible is the fact that here we are all these years later, still absolutely loving each other. We talk like pretty much every single day. And I think that when you think of losing someone, it's hurtful for the practical reasons. I won't have someone to snuggle. I have to pay more bills, blah, blah, blah. But really, it's the fact you're going to lose this identity in your life, this person, this companion, that is really harrowing. And the irony is people get so caught up in holding on to the person that when they break up, they never want to speak to them again.
Yeah.
And this is, which is really strange. And I have a few different relationships, like that, past relationships where I am not allowed to, or there's too much pain around it where we can't talk, even though I'd like to. And that is the most pivotal loss. And ironically, we're bringing about our worst fear because of that.
Yeah.
So if you can hold each other's value higher than the relationship, that is how you can be consistent. And you never have to fear losing each other, because you come into this assignment of roles, like you're fucking important to me. We're doing this no matter what. Everything else is a variable, whether you sleep together or not, whether you share bills or not, whatever. But it's like, I value you so much that we are not a variable. And that is the way that you can actually have lifelong connections.
Yeah. Do you remember, Samram, it was in the snow as well, we talked about the concept of the left hand and the right hand. I can't even remember it, but do you remember it? It was like, I think I was talking about the analogy of love, and that the left hand is like the conditional kind of love, in that you might feel like you love someone and then sometimes you don't feel like it. And it's kind of like it moves in and out, but the right hand is like, it's fucking steady.
I do remember that. Now you say it, like we haven't said that for probably 10 years, but I can't remember the significance of how the hands worked. No, it is about the unconditional versus the transactional. But yeah,
it was like, okay, so we haven't spoken about this. I'm just going to drop a bomb, but like, so we both have Scientology backgrounds, you know, like a lot of our spirituality comes from Scientology. So often we use terms that we got from Scientology to explain the things that we're thinking. So it was like the concept of left hand being ARC, you know, which is the concept of affinity, reality, communication, or like understanding, right? So like how close you can be with someone, like how connected you are with them. So that's like, you know, that's varying, it changes. But then granting beingness, which is just like, it doesn't fucking matter like where you are, how crazy you are, how much I like you. It's got actually nothing to do with the fact that I love you. Like love just as a constant, unwavering thing that just exists. And like we just decided in that moment, it's like, yes, like this left hand will come and go, it will move, it will change shape, it will change form, but the constant, unwavering right hand is going to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, that is the essence of it. That is the essence of it. And I guess trying to work out a way to make it something practical or useful, like how to land those things. Because I think that conceptually, this is the big part of embodiment, which is all three of us work so much in, is that these concepts of unconditional love are out there in so many different dialogues, so many different religious texts, etc. But how do we embody it and how do we live it? And one thing that I've come back to before is the in and the output. Like as a game designer, what do you need to take in and what can you put out? That is your absolute unconditional baseline. Because I think a lot of the fear of loss is not being able to self-source things being limited, finite, scarce. And that unwaveringness has an unkillability because it's to some degree infinite. Like my ability to reach out to you would never. It's not like, oh, if I didn't have a sandwich that day, I can't reach out to you. Like there's some aspect which is just always there. So even though this is kind of like bridging things which maybe seem unrelated, but in a relationship, to have an embodied sense of timelessness and unconditional love. The way I do it is I find the things which are unkillable, like the irreducible minimum. The things which can be taken away from me are not essentially me. My capacity, for example, to experience nature is one inflow, one way I get fed, which no one can take from me. All I got to do is go for a walk in nature or go to the ocean or, there's such abundance. So that's like a wealth on tap, like an unlimited ATM that is just going to fill up my cup. And then my capacity to make art is an outflow, which I don't need anyone for. I can write a poem, I can sing a song, do a dance. I can, I love reading books and studying, and I'm now studying to make video games. My capacity to do that means that I can have an effect in the world and I can contribute. So in a relationship, sometimes we want to contribute, we want to give them a massage or make them food. We might be speaking a different love language. So even though you don't buy them a gift, their love language is touch. They don't give a shit you bought them a watch, even though it costs like $2,000. And you're like, but I'm wanting to give. I wanted to have an effect. But if you can satiate that for yourself, so it's the out and the in, means I can get what I need from something which doesn't require anyone else's agreement, and I can give what I need without anyone needing to receive it or form that receiving terminal. That is a way to start to tap into your limitlessness. And it's unkillable and it's calm in the face of the storm because it has a quality that needs no permission and is not conditional. It's not like if you receive this, then I can love you. It's like I have a capacity because of these limitless things of the inflow and the outflow that I can show up. And it becomes, I guess, you mentioned Scientology, and then I'm also highly influenced by a lot of Eastern philosophies and things like that. It comes down to that void space and the 0 point. That also is timeless and effortless. You can't stab the darkness. And also comes down to this duality of dharma and karma, where I often think of it like the hand. Speaking of hands again, I think like one hand is the great hand of God, which is the dharma, which is the destiny, which is the flow. And then I think of the other hand being like this little tap dancer on my palm. And I can choose. I can go up to the top of the hand, or I can go to the back of the hand. I can go to the left or the right. And I think, I've got so much agency. Look what I'm doing. But ultimately, where I'm dancing, if the left hand is sliding across the screen, that's where we're going.
Yeah.
Is this kind of
that's a beautiful perspective, like just to see that visually as well, and to hold that perspective. It's like, I remember I've had this realization multiple times. It's like those awakening moments when you have your spiritual awakenings, and when you're realizing you're suffering and you're right in the thick of your suffering and you think you're fucking gonna die. And then there's this little fucking awareness that just goes, why are you choosing this? Why are you making it so hard for yourself? If you stress or if you don't stress, the outcome is going to be the same. So why the fuck would you put yourself through this emotional hell? And it's being on that hand is the spirit of life that is guiding you, and you are fucking thrashing around in the hand saying, this is the worst thing ever, get me off this ride. Or you can just sit the fuck back, relax, just take in the fucking scene, and it's you get to decide how you feel in your life journey. And I think that's something that I learned from you, Samram, is that you put your state of being at the forefront in terms of priorities, your state of being is the most important thing. And I think the times that you've probably let yourself down the most is when you've forgotten that and you've allowed things to shake your natural state of being, which is actually you're really fucking like free and light and open and happy. And that's the most important thing for you.
It's true, actually. Thank you for reminding me about that. I won't talk too long on this. I feel like I want to throw to you, Paisley, in a second, but just to wrap up that briefly. State is a ephemeral, intangible, invisible force in life, but it's actually our whole life experience. And obviously with open world theater, it's really fundamental to that, but it's something that we will so quickly give away. It's like my state of balance can be broken by, my fingernail snapped, or that book page ripped, and because we don't actually attribute value to the state, I now wreck my state for this thing which is worth 5 cents, whatever. So it's like, wow, my state is worth less than 5 cents. And so that's always something that I really, as you say, hold as a really high value. There was another important point to do with the hand. I've forgotten now. Maybe I'll throw to you, Paisley, and see if I can capture it back again.
I feel like here we're capturing, and the thing that I come to often with you too is like we're capturing a really great essence of what the relationship is and was like you two just go off on these tangents. Like I asked a quite a simple question earlier and it went off on this big area, and it's still even I was like, what the fuck are they talking about? Like yes, I'm getting value, but then it came back to like this state of like around the burning house analogy of like and just this, I'm not willing to compromise my state. I'm not going to go down there. I'll go into a burning house if it's for a greater good, but I'm not going into the shit, like as in like making, I'm not going to feel what you feel because of that you're not being you right now, and that's what you want to return to. And again with the like, doesn't matter. I feel like you're saying like over a 5 cent thing such as a book or whatever, but also over a $1 million thing of a house, it's just like just let it burn. Like let's return to just what us is, and we're slowly getting there. So this is part of my love and curse of you two, is just trying to keep this narrative going. You two are all over the fucking place, but let's just own that that's a part of the relationship. Is so then what really burnt the house down? When did you decide, okay, this is
done?
Let's separate this version of the relationship and figure out what's next.
It was the spiral. For me, anyway. I couldn't even conceptualize ever separating from Atlas. For me, it was like, he is my person for the rest of my life. I don't care if we never have sex anymore. I don't care if he never fucking makes any money. This is, if I'm going to suffer, I'm going to fucking suffer. This is my person. And that was my mentality. I could not contemplate a reality of not being in relationship with Atlas until I went through the spiral. And that is what liberated me enough from my dogmas and, all my shit, my fear around all of that stuff. And at the end of my spiral journey, I was like, wow, actually, we've grown a lot. And actually, we don't want the same things anymore. And it came down to a very simple question that I asked Atlas one day. I did some journaling. I was like, what is your ideal scene of your life? Because I needed to know that if we were living our ideal life, are those ideal scenes the same? Are they compatible? Because if they're not, what the fuck are we doing? Because it felt like I was wanting to go this way, he was wanting to go that way. And he told me, he was like, my ideal scene is I am this, magical person that drops into people's communities and brings them life and like really just like gives my energy and like, essentially is like this nomadic person who moves from place to place, like bringing things to life. And mine was the opposite. I was like, I want to be the grounded, stable sanctuary home for people to come and to heal and to come to life. And it was like completely opposite. And that's why I knew, no wonder we can't build a house together. Like, no wonder he's not contributing financially, like, because he doesn't want that. No wonder our family isn't like cohesive, because he doesn't want to be here, and that was like what the penny dropped for me. And that was when I realized, like we need to let each other actually live our most authentic truth, you know, and that means letting him go and be that. And for me, it was an I had to learn how to back myself and what I really wanted to create in my life by myself.
Yeah, it's big. It's huge to be able to hold an ideal regardless of how much you'll lose. It does make me think of the fact that it's really all about stripping things away, which is the opposite of what we think in a consumer society, capitalist society, where it's about gaining the house, the investing in your future together, getting love, even getting kisses, getting sex, getting affection. It's all about accumulating or acquiring. But actually, it's ultimately about letting go of our attachments that gives us true freedom. And so the same can be said for a relationship. It's like, what can you let go of to fully stand by your ideals? And ultimately, we were willing to let go of the relationship to stand by the ultimate ideal of, you wanted to create the God Queen headquarters and this home base for your community and a central point of sanctuary for people, and also for yourself, a nest where you could really feel safe enough to blossom. And I was determined to continue to explore and have, as you said earlier, experiences, because that's one of my most valued currencies. I feel like it's, ever since I was about 4, I remember holding a really vivid encyclopedia and just seeing these, like, probably now very distastefully gaudy saturated images of the world, you know, of toucans and of strange, whatever it was, French clothes or architecture and the Amazon and just all these unbelievable things which cohabited this planet with me. And at that young age, it was like, it's my ultimate goal to go and see with my own eyes and feel with my own hands as much of this realm as I can. So yeah, it's unwavering. And I think when you find those unwavering things, it's also quite peaceful, because even though the mind and the heart can be traumatized, there's this underlying, which is the current, it's that divine hand. It's graceful and it's effortless. You don't have to rebuild it. You don't have to convince yourself. It's like when all the talking and the excuses and the convincing is done, it's still that underlying constant note. And you could call it your purpose or your genius or whatever it is. But yeah, we were willing to give it away so that we could align to that emptying back to those highest values.
Yeah, and it wasn't like, in that moment we knew, okay, this is a defining moment. We are going our separate ways. You know, we had both become quite codependent. You know, there were certain things I could not do on my own. I was very reliant on you for certain things, and I remember feeling like the medicine for me, the way that I will be okay if we separate, is I need to learn to be my own man. Like, that was like one of my initiations into actually I'm a very masculine woman. Like, I'm a very fucking strong, capable woman, but I've been telling myself a story that I can't do this. I need you to do this. And I need to step into my life now and actually really do that intentionally. It wasn't easy. It really wasn't, because it was like, I remember sharing with you a couple of times on the phone, it felt to me like, you know, I was walking and like on stepping stones, and the minute I would take one foot off the stepping stone that I was standing on, the one that I was just on would just crumble. But it was so scary to step to the next one, but I couldn't go backward. It just felt like this huge, like, shaky fucking rock, you know, in this river. And I have to just keep moving forward because the one is gone now. I can't go backwards, you know. It was fucking terrifying for me. And yet I had to trust that the love that we had for each other was not going anywhere. You know, it was, and I'm so fucking grateful that we created a relationship container that was called Meristem, that, you know, we always referred to our relationship as Meristem as opposed to our partnership. It was always Meristem, and it always allowed for us to change and to evolve, because if we didn't have that, we wouldn't have survived.
Well, there was moments, you know, to my understanding at the time, quite gracefully broke up and was like, okay, we have different things that we need to do in the world, but there definitely at one point after that was quite a rocky time of like, Oh fuck, are we losing one another? If you want to speak to that, of the moments of like, oh, what's happening here?
I mean, we could talk about, there's a few different moments with that, because that I remember that very particular conversation when we were in Ride, lying on the bed, and you asked me that particular question about my future. And after that, we still lived with each other for quite a while, and then we moved house. And I mean, there's two things that come to mind. One was the defining moment in open world theater, where I think I jumped out of a window or something like that, and I left. I went immediately after that session and packed my bag and actually left the house. But as far as the wobbly thing, once again, it came back to me and my inability to gracefully exit. And to have something, when some new person comes in my life, I just give everything, to the maybe being disrespectful or not having a graceful way of being able to hold multiple things, which is core in not just polyamory, but just in decent relationships. And that was when my next relationship came with a housemate that was living in the Goku headquarters. And you and I had also just kind of just not got back together, but we were being intimate, or there's some kind of reconnection where
We
it was
had
blossoming again.
rekindled. Yeah, look, I'll just lay it on the line. So we'd separated, it was all good. You'd moved away and then you came back, and then I was already in a relationship with someone new, but it was an open relationship. So it was all ethical. And then you and I had, like, you came back to visit, and we were like in the fucking, bliss of our friendship again. It was like, I missed you so much. And like, we were just smashing into each other. And then yeah, so we had sex, and we were together. And it was like this moment where, like, we looked into each other's eyes, and it was like, oh fuck, it's still there, that spark is still there. And it was like everything came rushing back. And then I went away for a gig for like 3 days camping. And when I came back, you had fallen in love.
Yeah.
And it was all over. And not only had you fallen in love, you had gone, because you're a very extreme person, you always got to take things to the fucking maximum. It was like, I was like struggling to deal with that. But then I was like, okay, well, you can fall in love. That's cool. But can we still be us? And can we still have our usness? And you were like, no, I can't keep, like, we'll always be friends, but I have to really pursue this and give this my all now. And this is going to be my one. And that's what broke me. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? I felt so rejected. I still have a video because you literally, because you left like the day after or 2 days after or something. You were literally like gone, and I was devastated. I couldn't stop crying. The first time we broke up in Ride, I didn't even cry because I knew we were good. But this time felt like the biggest fucking betrayal, and I was broken. I was lying on the floor of the kitchen, crying my eyes out, like filming myself.
Filming herself, Leo Alpha. I'm broken. Wait, let me just quickly grab the camera while I'm...
because I was like, but the pain, my heart was like ringing. It was awful. And I needed him to know how much in pain
Look what you did to me.
I needed you to know.
I understand. Sure. It's a beautiful video. It's really, I cried watching it. Yeah. But it was, I mean, yeah, I've got no advice to give on this other than just to once again wave that flag and say, oh, it was crap. It was just, for those of you who feel like the new love that comes in is so rare and so important that you need to leap at it to grab it, you can never hold something that you grasp too tightly. And so, yeah, if you're navigating these things, like, be like Alpha, don't be like Atlas. Like, Alpha never had any kind of greed, where even if there'd be like some hot new guy or woman or whatever, it was always about like, hey, this is what I'm interested in, but I'm okay with not pursuing that if it's going to be detrimental to this, because we have a history. We've been together for years. Like, our friendship and your heart matters to me. And that kind of decency is the kind of love and friendship which you can actually have. Because if you treat it like that, it is sustainable and you have long-term connection. But yeah, I was not like that. And I was just like, no, this new thing is so important. And I need to serve it at the total disregard of our years together and everything like that. So it was very ungraceful. So yeah.
You know, even though it was ungraceful, I could still understand, because that's you. Like, that's what you gave to me. And, you know, this woman that you've fallen in love with, she was a sister to me. She is a sister to me, you know, one of my really close friends. And like, even though it was so painful, I wanted her to experience the fullness of you. Like, it was hard, but I had to fully fucking smack myself across the face and, you know, really like claw at all the shit. But really, when it came down to it, I know what an exceptional person you are. And my thinking was like, well, if I deserve you and that kind of love, and I love her as my sister, like, she deserves that too. And she should have the right to experience the fullness of you and for you to go all in and to see what that's going to be. And you had that journey together, and, you know, and you fucking learned. You had a hectic initiation into human suffering.
Oh yeah.
Yes. So I'm curious, during those times, like, maybe for you Alpha, sound like it was a bit more traumatic letting go experience, how you were letting go of Atlas and the specialness of that. And Atlas, maybe your letting go process was by jumping into another relationship. And I'm curious to hear, like, this attachment, these threads, these versions of the relationship, how you're both letting go in that, like, ex-demons releasing, maybe with or without love at that time, but how were you finding your own sovereignty? I know that was a big word for you at that time, Alpha, was sovereignty.
I mean, I only because there was a pause there. If you've got something, you can go. Oh, I'm kind of almost flipping it on its head by saying, I still haven't let go. Like, for me, it doesn't matter. Even though Alpha got married, it's like, cool, but like, there's this confidence, and it could be an arrogance, or it could just be a certainty that, like, the fibers of the Mary stem are unmatchable, and people can bring different things, but they can't touch the place that we have united, or the qualities that we exchange, the value that we give each other. So because that is so clear in my mind, that's why all the other strands can be cut, all the other privileges or treasures and things can be taken away. Because for me, there is still that unbroken line. So yeah, that's kind of how I deal with the ex-demons things. I still don't think I've fully sort of let go. But yeah, there's different tangents, and even as recently as the last time that I came over to Australia, you know, and we stayed together for weeks and weeks and that sort of stuff, and we were both in we were basically navigating, really being in each other's space, loving each other, but having no romance or no sexuality, and there's still recalibrations happening, you know, which is very recently. So yeah, it's still moving. But I guess that was my kind of counter answer to how to fully release, is like, there's still a part which has nothing to do with sex or romance or being quote unquote a couple that is unbroken and unbreakable and timeless. And that's how I find peace.
Yeah, I hear that. Yeah, I think, you know, releasing for me, my process was multiple releasings, as in, the process for me was never letting you go. It was letting go of my attachment to who I wanted you to be for me. And that's when I think of breakups, and when I think of the process of, you know, healing from relationships, I think that's actually what it's about, more than letting the person go. I think it's actually letting go of who you wanted them to be for you, your expectations, your hopes and dreams that you had for each other, like all of the pain and all the attachment, the emotional shit that you put on them. That's the stuff that you have to let go. And that happened in waves for me. You know, I had to let versions of you die that were never you. They were always me, my projections. You're going to be this, you're going to be this father to my child, we're going to have this, you're going to be this. It's like, that's not who you are. That's just who I wanted you to be. And that had to die. And every time those things died, we came into a deeper place of love, and I get to see more of who you truly are, and actually just appreciate for who you are to me, and recognize the role that you play in my life. And another thing on that is, like, really the magic has been in letting be. And, you know, I've journeyed this recently as well. Letting go often feels like that's what we have to do. I have to let go, which seems like something to do, you know, I got to do a ritual. I got to like cut the cords. I got to blah, blah. It's like, that is useful. But sometimes actually the more graceful thing to do is to let be, which is not fucking do anything. Just like sit and trust in the nothingness and the non-doing, that actually the love is there. It's always going to be there, you know?
And I think there is, the word grace reminded me of beauty, and the word trust reminded me of truth. And I think there's always relief in truth. You know if there's a misalignment, you know if there's a longing for another kind of reality. And regardless of how harsh that truth is, when it's spoken by someone who's owning it, there's a relief and a sigh from both sides. Like, oh, yes, that's right, quote unquote, because it's true. Not because it's what I want, but there's some kind of relief in there.
Yeah.
And beauty might seem frivolous, but I think it has function in the world. I really think that things that are beautiful work. Like it could be the structure of a flower somehow catches sunlight better or gives off the nectar or the pollen or whatever. But also in relationships and doingnesses, if we look at every moment, how to make it beautiful, even maybe fight beautifully, let go beautifully, whatever it is, there is a certain workability. I don't think it's just garnishing on top. And that's why I think grace is such a thing. And sometimes it can be hard because we want to be ungraceful, because to give someone grace is like giving them a gift. Why should I be graceful to someone that is being, you know, ignoble or a dick or whatever it is? But, you know, never let someone convince you to be less than your best self. And I do think that beauty has ripples far beyond any transaction or immediate cognition of what the ramifications are. And, you know, our relationship ripples into my relationships these days. And, you know, all the healing we did will affect so many different areas. So, yeah, it can seem once again a bit like an esoteric thing, but be guided by the most beautiful. What is the most beautiful way I could have this conversation? What is the most beautiful way I could exit this room or actually exit this relationship? And like, as I said, I have not done this in the past, but that is what I would aspire to, is beauty and truth in the most practical terms you can, pragmatic applications you can put them to.
You keep sharing so many things that I want to go off on a rant on as well, but I'm being the mediator here. Quit doing that to me. Quit baiting me, Atlas Talisman.
We can get Atlas back for another episode or something
another
else.
episode. So after this moment of going, I'm not, you know, where I can't focus on the specialness of us anymore. I'm dedicated to this. And Alpha alluded to, there was some big lessons there for yourself. How did you eventually get back into this energy of now, back into Mary Stem of like, okay, you know, I understand you needed to go off on that. I understood you needed to do this. I'm sorry, you're sorry. Let's be us again.
I'd say resilience of decency. I think that people are all too quick to let decency drop. You know, when we're not getting something from the relationship, it's like, oh, but I want you to like me or sleep with me, or, you know, when we go out to our friend's party, whatever. At the end of relationships, people will start being crappy and they drop their guard. But I think that we've always been decent to each other. Even when we're upset, it's still like, well, no, you can still stay at my house, or like, no, I'm still going to get you food, or no, I'll still help you out with that design for your album because I respect you as an artist. Like, we've always shown up with decency.
Yeah.
And I think therefore we can actually rely on each other, and we've therefore held each other through the emergencies. I love emergencies because they allow all the social stuff to dissolve. And at certain times, and certainly, you know, personal crises, maybe we'll reach out to each other in tears, and it could be about a different relationship or whatever is going on. And we've been there for each other. So that like primal trust, even if the mind or the heart might quiver or doubt, that primal trust of like, but I keep falling into you and you keep catching me. That has been what's brought us back to just know that we're we're in it for the long haul, ride or die, and that meristem, still exists.
Yeah, I think I would say that's the thing for us, because if I can share a little bit, Atlas, it took a while for you to really learn how to lean on people and consult with people on your life. Like, you were always a very self-sourced person, even in relationship. You don't talk about, if you're struggling with things, you don't, because that's just not how you were raised. And after we separated and you started having, some rocky times in relationship land, I remember initially it was hard for you, because I would have to call you and be like, are you okay? Like, because I was calling you, if I'm in the shit, you're the first person I call, because I know you know me like nobody else. And gradually over the years, you started opening up more and more to me. And it's interesting, I don't think that you could have opened up in that same way had we still been in a romantic relationship. It's like in the safety and the comfort of a friendship that has no ulterior motives or agendas is where you learn to trust me with your most vulnerable feelings. And when you're heartbroken because of another woman, and you're calling me and you're like, am I going crazy? Am I like, is this, should I be, and all those moments where I could actually just be a friend to you and like be like family to you. I think those are the moments where we really found like the longevity and we have created something really special in that sense. I have the same thing with you, Paisley. But it's like, I think with people, when they break up with each other, it's like they take them out of a category and put them in a different category. Whereas like we kind of, I don't know, like it's like we kind of just went deeper almost. Does that make sense? We just kind of went like even deeper, and it was like, yeah, cool. On a sexual or romantic level, like that's not where we thrive. But where we thrive is in the fucking timeless, like beyond personality stuff. Like that's where we thrive. And that's kind of what happened.
Sort of like looking at a relationship like a business. It's like, you're really good at facilitating. Don't be out there trying to make sales or whatever it is. Like, get a salesperson so you can be even better at facilitating or whatever it is. It's like, don't like get rid of, outsource the jobs that you are not good at and focus on the ones that you are. And it's like, if our relationship is a business, like we're focusing on XYZ, our creativity, our vulnerability of relating with other people and sharing that with one another, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, sex wasn't our thing. That was like the sales of business. We need to get a salesperson in. Yeah, we're going to do that elsewhere.
Yes.
I feel like that's definitely a thing that all three of us, or like the two of us in relation to Alpha, have experienced, is like finding where, okay, this relationship, we tried this area and it was good. We did the things, but I reckon we could deepen in this area.
Yeah. And that's one thing that I will say about you both. I think one of the reasons why our friendships have endured despite our romantic partnerships, ending, is like, both of you are extremely what's the word I'm looking for, like you're consistent in your decency. Maybe I don't know if you're like that with everyone. Like, I mean, I see that you are, but with me, both of you like have never, like, I know I can call you at any time of day and you will be there. Like, I know that. And like it's tested, like anything that's happening for me, I can call you there. Like, you're consistently kind, you consistently fucking follow through for me. And to me, that's so precious. And that means more to me than anything, that I can rely on you in that way. And I see other relationships that I've been in where I haven't been able to maintain a friendship afterwards, like the friendship aspects totally collapsed. And I always know it's like that kindness was never there from them. Like you can love someone, but you don't really like them, or you don't really trust them. Like with you both, it was always that fucking pure, you're just fucking good people, you're just really good people. And I think that that's what makes our friendship work, because me, I'm a spiteful person. Like, yes, I'm good people too, but it's rare that I will be the first one to reach out and be like, I'm sorry, I fucked up. Like, I'm always open to you doing that, but both of you have that resilience and the kindness, and you won't hold a fucking grudge, and you let it go. And that's what I need. You know, I need to know that, because the thing is, I test. You know this about me. I will test, like, how far away can I push you to see if you really fucking say, if you really mean what you say. You say you're not going to abandon me, let me fucking test you. And both of you have passed those tests, you know, time and time again.
This is something that I really just felt a huge passion come up in myself around, because it's not just about relationships. It's about every aspect of human relationship, as in friendships, as in community, as in your next door neighbor, as in we as nations, whatever it is we're not assholes. We're usually doing actions because we legitimately think it's the best thing to do. That's why we're doing it. We ultimately all want to be loved, and is just trying to build some fragment of a fractured childhood dream about what we hope our existence could become. And if you just make space for people to make a few shitty comments, take a swing at you, you know, turn the other cheek, as a wise man once did, or someone said about a wise man. Like, damn it, there's so much. Like, I'm in this beautiful connection with you still, Simon. Like, I've got so much abundance, and all I had to do was just be decent, just like be forgiving. Like, forgive people into their best version of themselves. Hold a space where it's safe for all of the guards and the spite to gently come down, because all they are protections. And I just really want this on all levels. Like, just like I have a connection with you, my connections with other people, my connections, my community, that is right there with us. And we need to start looking beyond the immediate quick defenses, the spite, the stories, all of the quick dodge sarcasm that we've ingrained into our culture, that we've learned from each other, we think is cool, all these sort of things, because none of us want to play that. It's like a tired game of holding up these costumes, which are not really that kind of ill-fitting. And yeah, I get to have the treasures of it, but it's not enough just for a few tolerant, decent people to hold the line. It's like that, like you, Samram, your decency, your awesomeness, your beauty, your artistry, your wisdom, your spiritual healing, all these sort of things, like that is throughout our species. And if you're listening to this, like, please, if there's one process you can do for yourself, it's literally to chart out, like, get, you know, cards, toys, marbles, whatever you want, and have one for every single significant person that you hold a grudge against. And soften and remember that spark. There's a reason, particularly ex-lovers and friends, there's a reason that you really looked into them. And don't doubt yourself. Don't doubt that version of yourself which is light, which is open, which is sentient, which is having those breakthrough flow moments. Like, that is the version of yourself when you're in love, when you're generous, when you're really connected, when you're eye to eye, when you're heart open. Trust that version of yourself, not the spiteful version of yourself on the kitchen floor like 7 months later. Like, just don't trust that version of yourself, because those people exist behind the masks. And if you can do that for yourself, like, you know, as there was some parable about Buddha or whatever, and people coming up with insults, and he just didn't take the insult, so they left holding it. But you are left holding it. You, in the quiet of the, dedicated attrition, you are throwing hate bombs silently at that person. They don't know that. You're the one with the shell shock in your energy body of hating people and resenting people day after day after day. It's like, give yourself a break. It's a key point of self-care. It's not letting anyone off the hook, it's letting yourself off the hook. And that is what obviously I'm really passionate about it. And it's a deep sense. And I think this is also why I love you so much, is because you've got this deep sense of wanting to heal and harmonize, like you did as a little girl in your family. You wanted to bring everyone together, and you want to do that in community. And I want to do that in community. So if anyone is listening to that, like, that is what we need to do. If we want, world peace, shut up. Can you have community peace? Like, can you actually, with integrity, face every single friendship that you've fractured and heal that? that is where our community will come together. And that is then unbreakable. Like anyone else can come up and whisper in my ear about alpha or try, like I know if anyone attacks me, you'll be there on the front line. Like that is where the true peace comes, just because it can't be shaken, because it's not based on gossip and ego and the play, you know? So when you're in that level of innocence, like,
I think actually, like, you know, you're speaking to something that I'm kind of interpreting through my own language, you know, we tend to do this, but I think what turns us against people is never what they do to us. It's always we feel robbed of the opportunity to love them the way we want to. Because when we love people, when we really love them, we get a taste of our true essence.
yes,
We get to experience who we truly are when we let the guard down, when we let the ego drop, when we let the masks go, and we can just be ourselves in our innocence, right? And when that's taken away from us, the feeling is like, I didn't get to love you, and therefore I can't really be myself. And it's a wrong computation. It's wrong, because you still can. Like, you can be in that true nature, in that true essence anytime. You don't need anybody to love you to feel that. You don't need to have to give your love to someone to feel that. Like, you can be in that at any moment. But it's just that, you know, we become portals. We open up those experiences for people. It's like, fuck, I never knew that I was this person. Like, wow, I'm experiencing myself in a whole new different way. And I want to love you with my allness. And when a person cuts that, to me anyway, that is like the most awful thing. It's like, how dare you not let me love you? And it's ironic, right? It's ironic. And this is how I feel with the people that I quote unquote hate. It's like, hate is the shadow of love. That's the way that I see it. It's like love, when it's not allowed to be fully expressed and it's blocked and it's got all these obstacles in the way, it becomes hate. It's a shadow of love. But you can't hate someone unless you fucking love them. It's impossible. If you hate someone, best believe you love them, because if you didn't love them, you wouldn't give a shit. There would just be nothing. The only reason you feel that way about someone is because you love them. And the only way back to love is to remember that you hate them because you love them. So let the fucking guards down. And the love didn't go anywhere. It's always been there.
That's such a trait of greatness, is to, and like I said before, not let anyone convince you to be any less than your truest version of yourself. But what an exquisite sacrificial display would be, even if that person doesn't want to talk to you, to still like be writing them poems. You don't even have to send them to them.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I know you've taught me this recently with some of your, because you've been dating and things like that, and you've chosen to be the most alive, in love, sensual version of yourself, even if it's not necessarily that particular person that's bringing it from you. It's like this state that you want to be in. So, oh, cool, I'm going to show up like this in this relationship. And I'm still learning from you and just sort of how to do that. But it is true. I really feel that the biggest frustrations and betrayals come because we don't be that version of ourselves. And it's nicer if the person's there and looking at you in the eyes and welcoming your poems, your songs, and wants to dance with you. But there's an even more beautiful version of the person that shows up to do it anyway. Yeah. Like the little kid that takes his little ukulele and sings while all the adults are fighting, whatever. It's like, that's more heart-wrenching and touching, you know. And if you can pull out into the story of your life, you know, are we living a life worth telling? And if you can pull out and go, man, I still said a prayer for them, or I still wrote them a poem, I still, you know, whatever it is, I was dancing, looking at the moon and saying, I wish you were here, whatever it is, that generousness, that largesse is something that will bring a tear to our own eyes on our deathbed, saying, that was really beautiful that I did that, you know?
Yeah, that's the thing. People can do anything to you, but ultimately when you close your heart, that's on you. You did that, you know, because you don't have to. Wow, we're so cute and wholesome, and
very cute and wholesome, and extremely baiting for me. So hard to keep my mouth shut right now.
Well, you don't have to.
episode. No, there's like a big Pandora's box I want to open up, and we've already gone over the 2-hour mark. So this is already our longest episode. So I'm gonna do my job here.
So disciplined, Paisley. Thank you.
Start wrapping this up. So yeah, I'm curious to hear. What I'd like to hear from the two of you, because there's been like a lot of sharing as a way to close this off, as they're talking about, we ended on that, like, it's you that chooses to close your heart. Like, oh, fuck it, I'm going to open the Pandora's box. So, because I feel like we need to end on a like the open rather than a close, is like, so as you've been experiencing also, Alpha, is going into this stuff, especially it is your song, X Demons, that we're creating this around, but I've been on the wave of this as well. So things are happening. And at the start of the year, like there was an essential moment with my dad where he's just like, and we're ending our relationship. And I'm like, oh, you know? And throughout all these moments that you're sharing, these moments of like, we just got to be open. Can you be open with your community? I'm also going through another with someone really close to me where it's like, I'm just choosing, I know eventually I'm going to open back up. I'm choosing to be closed right now, right? And when it feels right, I'm going to open back up. So that's one thing. And the other thing is with my dad is just 2 days ago, he messaged me and he's like, hey, Paisley, you didn't say Paisley, said my other name, but like, I have mail here for you. Would you like me to open it and send you a picture? I haven't lived in that house for fucking more than half my life. Mail doesn't just fucking go to that. I've never had mail at that house because I was too young to receive mail when I left. Why now all of a sudden has mail just turned up? And, you know, right now I know eventually I will reply, but right now I just don't have it in me to just go, yeah, cool, I'll just open up because of, you know, I am choosing to be closed for this moment because that's what I fucking need, you know? Yeah. So I would love to hear a bit more of that side of like choosing to be closed, but then maybe holding that attention of like how to get to that point of being like, I do want to open up, because it's easier said than done to just go, yeah, just you chose to close off. Yeah, cool, I did, but it's not easy to just go, wow, I'm open now. You know, it's not like opening a door. This door has bricks and fucking boulders and a lion and a murderer that all you feel like are gonna come for your heart right now.
I really think this is Atlas's bag because I'm in your boat, you know, Paisley, you know me. When I close my heart, like there's literally a text message from my ex right now that I haven't read for like 2 weeks or listened to because I'm like, I don't want to deal with it right now. So I know what you mean.
Yeah, I believe in universal principles, which are they just totally don't respect subjective preference. So for me, it's like closing does not serve the system. It doesn't allow the diffusion, the diffusal, as in like the spreading and the integration of all the parts, whether it be nutrients, oxygen, energy. It's hooking attention units and disempowering by capturing those parts of your energy. So I know what you mean. You don't want to just be a walkover that has no boundaries either. But for me, it's about creating a vortex of your standard that was maybe broken when they walked away from you. But it's like still being the ultimate, true, authentic version of yourself, but creating the vortex to draw them up into the harmonious reality, rather than thinking, oh, now I'm going to connect with them, so I'm going to go down, I'm going to let them treat me badly again, blah, blah. Like still holding such a beautiful, but it is soft as well. So it's like when the person's fighting, or like Alpha was saying, you know, this aggression comes towards me, whatever it is, and it's just like, I don't need anything from you. Like there's so much space. You can swing, like there's no vases to knock off the shelves. We're in an open wilderness of infinity. I don't need anything from anyone ever. And so there's this real kind of unguardedness where it's purely just grace and it's an invitation, and it's a joy, and it's the kind of core sentience which actually dissolves all of the details. Like you don't need to sort things out. You don't need to discuss that time that someone kissed someone, or the blood did get there, or someone broke someone's car. Neither of you give a shit about that. This is my personal opinion, is that we are craving some kind of ecstatic, revelatory, unencumbering liberation, freedom, respect, unwavering wilderness. Like that is what we are so starved of. And so we get into these little backstabby grudge, like, oh, it is so below our species to get wrapped up in this sort of stuff. So I would still say open, but don't now go like hungry, thirsty, like, oh, I need to placate you or do that. No, it's just like, welcome to my world again. Beautiful. My world is so big there are no doors. You just happen to go lock yourself in a box. You're still in my world, but you are hiding in the closet going, you're not in my world. If you choose to let yourself out of your closet, cool, you're back in my world. Awesome. And if you want to come to the party, I'm doing this at this vibration. You're welcome to come in. And you still can't meet me? Cool. Well, then go back in your box. Or I'm too busy on this space and I need nothing from you. Like that's how I would approach it. And die to it again and again, because I believe that, and this goes in the face of so many probably like self-help and potentially very important. Like I'm in no way the universal guru of love. Like there are many different states of being that require certain things. Sometimes self-care, boundaries, closing the door, these things might be absolutely vital for people that are maybe more leaning on being overwhelmed or whatever it is. But if you want to, as I said, sometimes open world is like post self-help. All of the excruciating, tiring, abusive qualities of those connections, I believe, are fearful limitations. And often the experience of avoiding is so much worse than the actual experience we're trying to avoid. Mm-hmm. Like all of the, I don't want to speak to this, and you're going to say this thing, and all of that kind of stuff is so wearing. And if you're just willing to come up into the face of the fire and let it howl right through you and have nothing, that is such a relief. Like knowing that there are no locked doors and you've got this grandeur where you have that, which is the state of open world, is to feel like everything in your whole awareness is accessible to you at all times, not shrinking your power influence in any time in any way. So that is kind of how I would deal with it, is like welcoming the person up, really maintaining the new version of yourself that was able to blossom without them, and maintaining that version of yourself. And with a lightness. It doesn't have to be earnest. It can be, yeah, sure. Oh, nice to hear from you. Sure, do that, and not even let them go 80% of the way. If they've been the one who's really had the boundary and locked things off, go, oh, cool, nice, and being casual with it, because that really allows them to tentatively start to be more themselves, more loving, more gracious, and give them space as well. And that's where the innocence comes from. Give people the space to be innocent.
I want to share one story. You know this story, I think both of you do, but for those listening at home, my relationship with my dad has been very rocky over the years. In my personal narrative, my dad was like one of my biggest enemies. He was the reason why I felt I couldn't pursue music. He made me feel like the worst mum in the world. Every time he spoke to me, he was on my case. I felt he never wanted to know me for who I was, because I refused to live the version of me that he wanted me to be, right? So that's our dynamic. And so much fucking pain I experienced in our dynamic. And then one time, after our big world trip, you and I, remember, Atlas and I had to move back home for a little bit. And I hadn't lived, back home for so long. Moved back home for a few weeks, and my dad was fucking awful. He was treating me so badly, and he was saying things like, you're not even a real mum, you're not even a real parent, you don't have your life together, you this, and it was like so painful for me to receive. And I remember being so fucking angry, and we were in a weird place, and I went for a walk. I had a conversation with your dad, actually, Atlas. And he was like, go for a walk, and you need to itza, like you need to say, like, what is it, say the things, like just get them out kind of thing. And I was like, you know, when you feel like you've been pushed down so much, I just had this like violent surge of life force. I was like, I need to get out of this house. I need to feel free. And as soon as I walked out the fucking door, I had this epic surge of life force crack me open. It's like, to this day, the most exhilarating non-drug induced state of being I've ever felt. And I've done different drugs. And it was crazy. I felt an aliveness like I have never, ever felt. Tears were streaming out of my face. I was just like, I'm done wearing this heaviness. I'm done letting all of his words affect me. I am a free being. And it was like in that moment, I remembered I am a free being. He can do anything to me. He can fucking tell me I'm the worst mom in the world. I could take my son right now and go be homeless on the street. I'm free. No one can touch my freedom. And it was like, doof. Right. And I felt like the grass and the cars and the trees and the sky was all speaking to me. And I was like, holy shit, look at all the love that exists for me that I could not receive because I had closed my heart down. And in that moment, it was like everything came flooding in. Like I was bawling and laughing. I looked like a fucking crazy person. Right. And I'm walking in my neighborhood where I grew up. Right. And then I'm like, cool, I've had this transcendental reconnection with God, with the true Father, with God. And I'm walking, I'm like, now what happens from this state? What do I bring home? Yeah, okay, I'm in bliss now, but do I go back home and go into the same reality? Like something has to shift. And so as I'm walking, I see a frangipani tree and I love frangipanis. And I'm like, oh, I'll pick some flowers for my dad and give it to him as a peace offering. But because I'm so open and this like blissed out spiritual nature, I'm like, I don't want to pull the flowers off the trees because that would be harming them. And as I have that thought, a single frangipani flies off the tree and lands in my hand so perfectly. And I look down and there's all these perfect frangipani flowers on the ground and I'm collecting them and I put them in my hand and I walk home and I'm like a little child again, excited to show my dad, like to give him an offering of love with total love and innocence without any expectation of how he's going to react to me. And I take them and I write a letter to him and like just pure innocence. And I'm like, Dad, I know that you love me. I know that you care for me. And that's why you worry for me. I want you to know that I still have a relationship with God. It just doesn't look the way yours looks with God, but I still talk to God every day and I love you and I respect you and I'm sorry that I hurt you. Just that letter, that's all I wrote with the flowers and I left it on his bed and then I left the house. I had to go drive and meet my mum. On the way, my dad calls me on the phone and he's bawling his fucking eyes out, right? And he's crying and he's like, Nita, I'm so sorry because I love you so much, you know, in his accent, and I'm fucking crying on the phone. That was a key healing moment in our relationship. And, you know, that was in 2014, that conversation happened. And of course, it didn't just like make everything magically perfect, but it was one of the key healing moments where I was like, I don't want to hate you anymore. I can't because it's poisoning me, my relationship to life. And now, like after, you know, many more moments, now when I go home to visit, he asked me how I am. And like, that seems like a small thing for most people, but you got to understand my whole life, my dad never once asked me how I am, like ever in my life. We never even looked each other in the eyes. Like now for him to ask me like, how are you? How are you going? Are you okay with money? Do you need anything? Like that's fucking miraculous for me, you know? And I could not have had that had I not done my own fucking processing, you know? And I've had to have boundaries, but not heart walls, like boundaries, but not heart walls.
All right, that was the one. That was it. That's what we needed to hear. That's what I needed today. So thank you so much, Atlas Talisman, for joining us. For anyone that's interested in hearing more of Atlas's world, especially the open world of Atlas's world, he has an upcoming course called Open World Foundations. where you essentially get the foundations to this way that he shows up in life, in the way that it's affected Alpha and I. So if obviously you listen to this podcast, so you obviously know that we are quite open beings, and there's actually foundations out there to cracking open, having these moments like Alpha has explained, to show up authentically, to be a leader, to not be affected, but to be in response to life. So definitely check him out on all the platforms. So if Atlas, you have anywhere that you want to share for people to reach out to you, please do.
Just Atlas Talisman. Yeah, usually openworldtheatre.com's up, which I'll put something up there now. I'm always rebuilding websites, but generally just reach out to me in any form. And also it doesn't have to be a pre-concluded thing. If there's any knowing, fumble towards me and we'll work it out together.
I love that. Fumble toward, yeah. So just to clarify, there is a course kicking off on the 1st of September. I know that this episode comes out in tomorrow, actually.
Tomorrow, yeah.
So you'll be hearing this, and definitely reach out, be part of that course, because it is life-changing and it will really give you an intimate experience of your own life. And that's really what we're here for. I also want to let you know about the exorcism live ritual event that's accompanying Ex Demons, which is happening on the 28th of August. Please jump into that as well. If you've been listening to these podcast episodes and you know that you need your own healing around your ex-demons, that is what the ritual is for. So if you need the details, just hit me up on Instagram. You know where to find me. That's it.
Love you so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, I really appreciate both of you for sharing so abundantly. Abundantly is the word I'm choosing, in a positive way. In a positive way.
We're both individuals.
You unlocked the longest episode, so that's an achievement. That's a badge that you can take. And
watch out, Joe Rogan.
I look forward to more of this, and I'm glad that we got to introduce you, Atlas, to our audience, as that's a big part of this podcast, is to continue to share the community and more intimate experiences. So thank you for that.
I love you, Samram. Thank you so much.
Love you, Samram. Love you.
Yeah. All right.